get started. First up, that's Student Achievement? No, Operations Services Committee meeting. So I'd like to call to order the Operations Services Committee meeting for April 20th, 2021. If I can have a roll call, please.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing? Mr. Riddles?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan-Wozniak?
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Present.
Mr. Castellano?
Yes. Present.
All right, we do have all our board members present. Just kind of for the record, I do want to mention to the board and the community and make everybody aware that next week we will have 2 meetings, so both Tuesday and Wednesday. You'll get information about that. And I also know that our community as well as our board are reacting obviously to the news that we have just witnessed. And so everybody I know coming out on a Tuesday night and having this conversation about what is some very important topics may be tough, but I'm glad that you all made it out, and I appreciate the board as well for coming through, and I'm always proud of the board attendance as it relates to our committee meetings and participation. With that, I would like to go to item 3A, the approval of the meeting minutes for the March 16, 2021 OSC meeting. Motion by Mr. Riddle.
Second.
Second by Ms. Leguizamo. Any comments? She said, any comments, corrections to the minutes? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan-Wozniak?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Yes.
Mr. Castellano?
Yes.
All right, meeting minutes approved. Discussion items, which are for possible action at a regular meeting. Condensate vacuum system replacement at WHS Washington campus. And I'm sorry, Deputy Moulton. Before Mr. Moulton gets started, just a reminder, this is a committee meeting, so those who are in attendance, if you have a question, we do ask that you would walk up to the microphones. We have 2 microphones that are placed here in order to make it convenient. There are blue markers on the tape, so I ask that you would just line up and I would recognize you in the order in which you come forward. Please pause as people ask their questions. We do have someone here who will be wiping down the microphone as we do want to be aware that we are still in a pandemic and COVID is still real and impacting our community. So once again, if something comes up during the presentation that you have a question on, you can walk to the microphone, wait for us to recognize you, and then you can ask your question. Go ahead, Deputy Moulton.
Board meeting.
This is not a proactive item, right?
No, ma'am.
I mean, a retroactive item.
This is not a retroactive item. We have not purchased this equipment as of yet.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Deputy Moulton. Next up, we have our vacation entitlement information, 10 minutes.
Thank you. On the screen, you'll see in front of you a brief presentation we did to highlight this item. We wanted to bring this forward now as opposed to waiting until June of this year at the end of the fiscal year so that you understood what the recommendations of the administration were, as well as the staff to understand what we're asking to move forward. Next slide, please. So currently, per Board Policy 4405, there are vacation carryover limitations, and I'm going to talk about the recommendation from last year on the next slide, but I just wanted to highlight here that in the current policy, employees can carry over up to 5 vacation days between fiscal years. Any days between 5 days and 10 days needs superintendent approval, and anything over 10 days needs Board of Education authorization. So just to refresh everybody's memory on the action that took place in May of 2020, we requested an unlimited carryover of all vacation days for all staff members who qualified. These are your 12-month staff members, and you see the number there, 174 staff members, but your 12-monthers that are in multiple departments, multiple job classifications. The total was 1,264 and a half days. The total value that we brought to the board was $461,000. There was language in that action item that said that effective July 1 of 2021, which is the current year we're in, all previously established district policies and procedures regarding use of vacation time would be reinforced. Now, at the time we brought this item forward, we were 2 months into the COVID-19 pandemic. Nobody had any idea that it would last this long, and obviously vacation and travel opportunities have been limited this year. So we're seeing, like we did last year, a lack of opportunity for staff to take vacation time. Next slide. So these are some of the balances we show according to our attendance tracker for the current year. We reviewed 361 staff members that get vacation entitlements. Of those 361 staff members, 226 would be eligible for our recommendation we're going to bring forward this evening. So that would be all employees that have 10 days or more of current vacation time as of the report that we ran last Wednesday on April 14th. The total balance of all days combined for all the eligible staff members, inclusive of the 10 days, is approximately 5,300 days. The total balance of all those days when we reduce the 10-day carryover for the vacation allotment between years, which the superintendent has authority per policy right now to move forward, that balance is 3,127 days, just a little over that. And again, I just want to indicate we're talking about all days over 10 days. We start with 10 days. The recommendation will be to carry over anything excess of that. We're going to get to that recommendation in future slides. Next slide. So the value that we're currently looking at, and this is based on individuals' rate of pay this year, 10 vacation day value of all eligible staff members, almost $1.2 million. You'll notice the total value of all outstanding vacation days, inclusive of the 10, is $1.9 million, so almost $2 million. So this is give you a concept of the value this year versus last year, which was $461,000. Next slide. So our 2020 recommendation for carryover for next fiscal year is going to be this, that we roll over up to 10 vacation days for all eligible employees, effective July 1, 2021. All remaining eligible employee vacation time in excess of 10 days be converted to an alternate absence identifier. We have listed here COVID carryover as the identifier, but when we're looking at entitlement time that the staff look at in the ASAP system, we have vacation, sick, personal, floating holidays, etc. So this would be another line item when they review their balances. All vacation requests and approval protocols would follow the existing vacation request for this new absence reason. At the time of retirement, resignation, or termination, any remaining COVID carryover time would be paid at the employee's current year rate of pay, the 2020-2021 rate of pay. And then effective July 1, 2022, we would go back to the existing board policy language where we have the 5, 10, and 10 plus day parameters within the policy. Next slide. So the rationale for this is, as I mentioned earlier, staff haven't been able to use their time. It hasn't been safe to travel. It hasn't been safe to do a lot of things. The justification hasn't been there. There are other key factors in this recommendation that we want to bring forward. One is budgetary implications. If we were to say we don't want staff to lose this time, we want to pay them out, we're looking at $2 million. That's not good for our business office to manage that type of one-time impact. There's a 6% penalty for eligible employees, meaning we don't want to exceed 6% if at all possible, because this would count as an increase on their current year rate of pay. Within the last 4 years of retirement, that's something that could trigger a penalty for the district that could exceed the value of each individual case. We also have stipulations that say we cannot convert vacation time into sick time for TRS employees, but we can do that for our MRF employees. So we see some unequalness in the flexibility that we have. Lack of advance notice. Today is April 20th. If this did not go forward, we feel we would have a lot of staff using time between now and June 30th, and it would be difficult for us to staff the spring semester as well as the summer semester, which is what I make a reference to in the next bullet point there. And then also, very important to us that we do not lose this benefit for our employees. So they'll still have the opportunity to take the time or be compensated for it at a future date. Next slide. So we wanted to give a few examples so that individuals can see what this would look like. So in this example for employee 1, we have 12 vacation days as of the date of our last report. Now that value is going to be subject to change, what we bring forward to the board, because we expect some people to take time off between now and June 30th. But for the purpose of this, we'll use April 14th. So 12 vacation days. This employee's daily rate of pay currently is $200 per day. Effective July 1, 2021, this person would have 10 of their 12 vacation days carried over that would be added to their standard annual allotment that they get on July 1. 2 of those 12 days would go into the COVID carryover days. So this person is going to resign as of June 30th, 2025. They're going to use those 2 days between now and 2025 at resignation. And at that time, they will not get paid any compensation for these benefits. Next slide, please. Employee 2, a little different balance and rate of pay. 23 vacation days as of April 14th. Daily rate of pay is $450. Currently, effective July 1, we're going to push those 10 vacation days forward. That'll add to their regular allotment, whatever that is, per their bargaining agreement or their administrative agreement. 13 of those 23 days would be COVID carryover days. Now, this person is going to retire in 2033. No days are going to be used. So we're going to pay out those 13 days at the $450 rate of pay, which is $5,850. Now, subject to some taxes, et cetera, in the future, but just to show the example, this is the scenario we're looking at. And then we have one more example for employee number 3 that has 49 vacation days. Now, between April 14th and June 30th, that employee uses 6 vacation days, is rolling over, currently has 43 vacation days at a rate of pay of $385. So effective July 1, we're going to roll over those 10 vacation days that will get added to their regular allotment. The 33 days are going to show up in their balance as COVID days. They're going to retire in June of 2029, and they will have used 15 COVID days. So we're going to pay out 18 days at the $385 rate of pay, which equals $6,930. So these scenarios, staff using all of their time, staff using none of their time, or using a portion of their time, is what we're looking at and calculating so we can adequately spread out the value of that $1.9 million over time, because we don't know what the future holds for some of these individuals. Retirement, resignation, in some cases termination if they're entitled to those benefits when they sever employment with the district. So at this time, that is the administration's recommendation we would like to bring forward at the next board meeting, and we'll take questions.
Can they use COVID days for anything? Is there any restrictions on them?
So what we would recommend is that they use them like vacation days. So right now, depending on the employee's job classification and the unit, the bargaining unit they may be in, they may need to request those days in advance a certain amount of time. Supervisors have the opportunity to approve or deny depending on the circumstances. For example, in the SEIU contract, there are some blackout dates that say can't be off the first week of school, as examples, so that might be a denial. But for the most part, we want to follow the vacation request protocols for this leave time.
So but they could be used as sick days too?
The employee could use the days however they like, but just know that if somebody needs to use a sick day, we recommend they use a sick day.
Well, if they've run out of sick days.
These days would be able to be used at their discretion, but we would be monitoring the situation in real time when they make those requests. But again, we're kind of procedurally treating these as vacation days when they get requested.
Question here.
Yes.
Mr. Moulton, I just want to make sure I understand. So say I had 15 COVID days and I was carrying those over and I'm retiring in 10 years, I'm paid out for those COVID days at the rate that when I earned them, correct? Not at the new rate when I retire?
That's correct. The rate of compensation would be at the current year rate we're in now. We are going to record keep that information so individuals can see their balances and they can make the request just like they do their other leave balances, other leave entitlements. But from a financial standpoint, on the district side, through the business office, the human resources office, we'll have that documentation so we can reference that date and time. And the board is going to get some personnel information associated with the board agenda items so you see which employees we're referring to and what their current year daily rate of pay is. And we're going to keep that information cataloged for future use.
Right. Okay, that's good. And you're going to make that clear to employees so that they're not surprised when they retire. They understand the pay is for currently earned COVID days. Right.
Yes, sir. We'll give notice out to all the employees impacted by this when we know what the actual balance is going to be as of June 30th of 2021. So they're aware the amount of days, the rate of pay, what their options are to either use them while they're still employed or at the time they sever an employment, what the impacts may be if they have days remaining for payout.
Right. And one last thing. The union has to agree to that, do they? The unions, all the different unions, do they have to agree to that? Or the fact that those, normally you'd earn vacation days, and if you retired in 5 years and you retired with those vacation days, you'd get paid out at the current rate, wouldn't you? Not the rate you earned them?
Yes, so the vacation days at the point of time somebody retires, they will get paid out those days that are earned in that year at that current rate of pay. These would be retroactive to the current year rate of pay. So we're going to be keeping our unions informed. At this point in time, the consensus is that employees don't want to lose the benefit. They haven't been able to take the time off,
Right.
but they don't want to lose the benefit. And from the district standpoint, this is going to be a good method for us to have fiscal management over time to ensure that we can honor that request and also maintain our workforce here between now and the end of the year, the end of summer school, et cetera.
Right. Thank you, sir. No, that's it. Thank you, sir.
Ms. Hannah, and then Ms. Waterman.
Yeah, Mr. Moulton, the staff members that you're talking about, and what categories of staff
Sure.
are you making reference to I think you said it was 223 staff?
226 staff as of
226 staff. And so who does the staff consist of?
So the staff consists of any employees that accrue vacation time that have more than 10 days. So we have 12-month WPSS office workers, we have 12-month paraprofessionals, we have administration, building level administration, central office. We also have SEIU, 12-month staff. So all of those individuals would fall in the 226.
And so did I hear you say that you will provide the board with the personnel information?
Yes,
We will see the employees.
Yes, you'll be provided that information under executive content when we submit the agenda item for the following board meeting.
That's all the question I have.
Ms. Waterman?
Are we afraid that we'll never have them catch up on their vacation?
I wouldn't say that we're necessarily afraid. That's why we want to be proactive now and be very clear that as of June 30th, 2022, we're going to go to the existing policy language. Because staff members are not being forced to use the COVID carryover time between now and June of 2022, as well as their new vacation allotment, we hope that staff will be able to manage their time accordingly so that we can revert back to existing policy. We don't have a mass exodus of staff taking off, but they also feel that they're supported and they'll be able to maintain their time.
With this item.
How long are we going to be in this COVID cycle where policies are being,
Talking to Mike.
the policies are being temporarily changed, and like we have to deal with stuff like this with vacation days and all of that. When are we going to be out of that administrative part of the COVID and go back to the normal procedures and processes?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Hannah. That is something that we discuss on a regular basis. So the goal with this board recommendation and board action is that we can break the cycle for this particular board policy 4405 and revert back to existing policy language and practice as of June of 2022. So it's not our intent. Certainly, yeah, everything's certainly depending on conditions where we are with the pandemic, resurgence, et cetera, but it is our intention at this time that this recommendation will be the last recommendation of this kind. Staff always have the opportunity per policy to come back on an individualized basis and request in excess of 10 vacation days, but as of this recommendation, we're hoping, it is our intention that this would address the large quantity of employees that we have during this unprecedented time.
And so my only question, and it's more of a comment, is I know that we have a lot with students returning, and obviously I want to see the recommendation before I vote and make a decision, but I do think even during the pandemic, we should be encouraging staff to take vacation. Even when I was at home, working from home before we went back into the office, it was encouraged. It's because we all need the mental break, and so I would hope that we are encouraging staff to use their vacation if they can. I know there's some jobs as the students return, we need them in buildings, but I do encourage staff to take the time that they need for themselves. And just because we may not be comfortable traveling doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't still take the time to unplug and decompress. So thank you for that presentation, and thank you for the comments and questions. I'll pause briefly if there are any community members that have any question on this topic. Thank you. Next up, we have just information items. So there is a presentation of the district recruitment plan.
Thank you, Mr. Ewing. Mr. Figueroa is going to come up with his team and provide some information on district recruitment.
Thank you, Mr. Moulton, and good evening, members of the board, Ms. Plasencia, and community members. Today, I do have some of my colleagues from the HR department, Ms. Jasmine Jones, and I'm going to also ask Ms. Marisela Jimenez to join me here on the podium. And we have a brief presentation of around 15 minutes, hopefully, and any questions that you will have, we will certainly answer them at the end. Next slide, please. And the objective of our recruitment is to attract, identify, select, and employ qualified candidates to fill all district vacancies in support of our students. So what we do here in recruitment is not just all the support staff, but also we are concentrating our efforts in our educational staff, mainly our teachers. Next. We do have an equity and diversity point of view to share with everyone, especially with the community. We do reaffirm our belief that our staff should mirror the diversity present in our nation, as the district aspires to provide our students with an enriched educational experience that facilitates learning and acceptance from each other and set them on a journey for success. That's very important in Waukegan because, as we know, we have a large minority population in our schools. But we need to prepare them to be successful in the job market and anywhere they are in the nation if they move out of the Waukegan area. So we want to expose them to interaction with every type of culture and individual. That is a learning, educational goal. Next. And we certainly have a non-discrimination policy in the district that mirrors also federal and state legislation in that area. Basically, we offer employment opportunities without regard to age, gender, race, color, gender identity, national origin, religion, marital or military veteran status, sexual orientation, parental status, genetic disability, and other protected categories. And I want to make the point that many people in the district administrator, when they send you a letter, their letterhead sometimes have a very important quote from some historical personalities. That is included in my letterhead. That is our motto in HR, and we are just reflecting the policies of the district. Next slide, please. So recruitment sources is where do we go and recruit? Where are our sources of candidates, right? But we have voluntary applicants or walk-ins. We have interns. We have direct recruitment. We have digital platform, and we're going to discuss those. We have a student-teacher placement, employee referrals. We have local hirings. So we have a variety of sources, and we try to juggle all of these possibilities and try to provide you with the staff that the district requires to support the instruction and education of our students. Next, please. In the area of digital platform, I'm going to invite Marisela to explain a little bit more about that.
Okay, digital platforms. So in order to reach the largest number of audience, we're currently advertising on different job board online platforms. For example, most commonly K-12 JobSpot, the Lake County Regional Office of Education, Indeed, Facebook, and we're also reaching those niche boards like Lensa.com, Jobcase, or Upward, to name a few. Some of these platforms are in excellent visibility at the local and national level website that cater to educators. Next slide, please. So here's an example of a current flyer that we're currently advertising. It was most recently seen in Facebook. By posting our job vacancies in multiple platforms, we're building awareness. We want individuals to check our website and learn a little bit about our school district. For example, when they visit our school district, they could view our bargaining unit and then have an overview of our current benefits. We offer free medical, dental insurance, $70,000 in life insurance, competitive salary, to name a few benefits. Next slide, please. Digital platforms. So another platform market that we're currently using is virtual job fairs. Right now, due to COVID, these job fairs are offered virtually. Two of them is Illinois Resource Center and the Illinois Community College. Now, the Illinois Community College includes College of Lake County. Next slide, please.
So a concerted effort has been made to recruit and enhance our visibility at colleges and universities whose student bodies strongly reflect the diverse student and family makeup in our communities. In those efforts, we have taken a multifaceted approach through digital marketing, online career fairs, in-person career fairs, and through that, we're strengthening new and current relationships that allow us the best opportunities to connect with potential candidates. Of those colleges and universities, we focus on and engage with those that are considered diversity opportunity sites, where the student population reflects 15 to 35% minority enrollment. The percentage of diverse students per college or university increases the total number of students potentially enrolled in early childhood and teaching studies. And although we do engage as many schools as we can nationwide, local schools, for example, that we are engaging with are Northern Illinois University and Chicago State University. I also did just want to add, as far as digital platforming, we do advertise through the HBCU Career Center, the HBCUconnect.com, as well as HACU.net, the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities.
Okay, well, what I'm showing here is that our main thrust, our main effort in the recruitment is the digital platform. What that means is advertising in the internet, right? So in order to reach people in many of these areas, we use advertising in several platforms, and I want to give you a sample of our recruit from May to August 30th in each one of those years. These are some of the numbers of teachers and certified licensed staff, not administrators, who have joined the district. 183 for the year 2018, 132 for the year 2019, and in the year 2020, 116. So this is the backbone of the district in terms of attracting, you remember the recruitment objective, attracting, selecting, after identifying, and then onboarding, employing new teachers and staff here in the district. Next slide, please. We also have student placements. We do have a partnership with around 15 universities. They include universities in Illinois, Wisconsin, and Arizona. Of those, we have presently 21 student teachers, and we also have 37 individuals who are in a career path related to education or support services. So this is another source of recruitment that we have here in the district. They come, they work with us, especially the interns, and then normally they like the staff, they make friends, they like the opportunity and the experience, and then that translates into being selected for positions here in the district. Next slide, please. Direct recruitment is geared toward filling hard-to-fill vacancies. Now we move from digital platform to direct recruitment. That's when the HR staff goes and travels to different job markets to try to bring people, professionals, to fill some of the vacancies that we have in the district that we cannot fill in the area locally or in the immediate area, depending on the competition that we have in the market and the shortage that we have for certain type of license, especially teaching license. So we identify those job markers, and then we apply some recruitment strategies there, like advertising. We fly down there, we establish some relationships, either through digital distance or when we go there, and then we start trying to recruit individuals to come and join us here in Waukegan. Next slide, please. Direct recruitment so far, I want you to see this, that from 2018 to 2020 in Puerto Rico, for example, we were able to recruit 18 teachers, 2019, 9, 2024. Spain also was one of our markets with 6 teachers in 2018, 2019, 8, and 2024. I want to underscore that in 2020, COVID did tamper our efforts there. All of those markets were going to produce over 10 teachers each. In the Philippines, as you know, we also were able to recruit 13 teachers. If you do the math across, that's 62 teachers in 3 years. If you have a school with 20 classrooms, that's 3 schools that we have been able to provide the licensed teaching staff for them. Next. I would like Mr. Rafael Roman, he's one of our recruits from Puerto Rico, to join us. I want to indicate that we're extremely happy with Rafael and all the other members that we have been able to recruit. Rafael, specifically, he is the former Secretary of Education at the Governor's cabinet level. So that will be the equivalent of the person who handles ISBE here in the state. Thank you, Rafael, for joining us, please.
Hi to all. Appreciate the invite. My name is Rafael Roman. It's a big pleasure for me to work in Waukegan Public Schools. I have been here since August 2018. I was part of the group of Puerto Rican teachers that came here in August 2018. My wife is here too. She's teacher in Waukegan High School and me. The experience of the recruitment and human resources was a very professional experience. We know Mr. Figueroa in Puerto Rico. He brings us the opportunity to share our experience and share our knowledge. It's very easy to hire teachers in Puerto Rico because we have the license, education license of our teachers belongs to universities accredited by Middle States, and the process to being certified in Illinois is very fast to participate in the education program here. We are very grateful for all the support of human resources, and I think that from the group that came here in 2018, I believe that more than 90% of the teachers are here. I stand here, and that means that the opportunity that you bring to us is working, is good, and we are working very, very hard with our students in our schools. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. We also have from Spain, Ms. Tania Lacerna de Juan, who is joining us. She's one of the teachers that joined us. Thank you, Ms. Lacerna, for being with us tonight.
Thank you everybody for the opportunity of coming here. I'm one of the 6 Spaniards who came on 2018, and I really appreciate the opportunity that Waukegan Public School gave us to come here, have the opportunity of working in schools here with this amazing community. I want to thank as well Mr. Figueroa and Ms. Treviño, who interviewed us in Spain, and they give us the amazing opportunity of being here, and everything they did for us when we arrive here. You come to a new country that you don't, well, you might know something, but not as much as we do now. And they welcome us. They came to the airport to pick us and everything that we needed. It's not the same as the people who come from Puerto Rico, because we do need a visa, and they help us with everything that we needed at that time. And I've been here this is my 3rd year here, and I wish I could say that I stay longer, but like Spain is really far away. It's not easy. It hasn't been easy with COVID and going and visit and everything. But I would like to, in a near future, maybe try again and come here, because I had like the best time of my life. I love the Waukegan community, the families, like my school, everything. So thank you very much for the opportunity that you give the people from Spain to come here and live the cultural and everything. Everything has been amazing. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lacerna de Juan. Also, we have a representative from the Philippines, Maria Fe de los Santos. Maria Fe joined us, and she reminded me, I said December 22nd, 4 months ago. No, she reminded me it was December 19th.
Good evening to the board, and good evening, everybody. So I'm Maria Fe de los Santos. I'm one of the newly recruited Filipino teachers, and we work in the Diverse Learners Department. And I met Mr. Figueroa in the Philippines through a Zoom interview, and we were able to fly here by December 2020, and it was in the middle of a pandemic, and against all odds, and probably serendipitously, we got here. And when we landed at O'Hare, the support and the help that Mr. Figueroa's department, Ms. Marcela, Ms. Eliza, they gave us so much support and help in order for us to be able not just to survive Illinois, because this is totally new for us. Like, we live in a tropical country and we are in the middle of winter. They gave us so much support and help for us not just to survive but to thrive. By January, the Diverse Learners Department of the district made sure that we hit the ground running by providing us with all our trainings and introducing us to all the needed programs and protocols and everything that we needed in order to be the most effective and clear-sighted educators, and in order to benefit also all the stakeholders in this community. And by February, I met my family at North Elementary School, and Ms. Lumberger and the diverse learner teams in the school, they all supported me and guided me. My mentors, Mrs. Goshi and Ms. Vidovic, they were able to guide me into being a productive and efficient teacher, and everyone in the school has, and not just the school, everyone in the district has been so kind. They've been so patient, and they just helped us adjust and learn. And now that we're in hybrid, I'm just glad that we're connecting with students. We're connecting with parents. We're meeting our colleagues in person. And what I could say to close is that this is a community where we look forward to staying in as long as we can. And we hope that we could prove ourselves and contribute as much to the community, because Waukegan Community Unit School District has made us feel like home. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Faye de los Santos. Yes, she was very cold that in the middle of December when she arrived to O'Hare. Our next speaker doesn't need presentation. Is our Washington campus principal of the Waukegan High School, Mr. Dan Hill.
Good evening, board, superintendent. Nice to see you all in person. I was going to get up here and joke and say they recruit me from the south side of Chicago, but having been a recipient of, actually I was recruited through the University of Minnesota some 18 years ago by Mr. Fred Howard at the time. And so being now a high school principal here, one of the things that we met with the principal leadership team, we met with Mr. Figueroa some months back, and we asked him, what are some of the needs and challenges that your department is experiencing? Because it's very easy oftentimes when we're looking at those vacancies to really point the finger and get frustrated. But we wanted to know, what are some of the challenges that your department is experiencing? And one of the things that he said to us as a goal and a promise is that he's going to do whatever he can to help us to fill those vacancies so that as we're starting the school year, we can have a certified teacher in every classroom, so that again, at the high school, we can offer the courses that we need to offer. So we can have the level of rigor that are needed in each course, and we're not having to fill those with substitutes, like in some cases we currently are. So I'm here. I know the board has been very supportive over the last few years in those recruitment efforts, is to just lend a voice and say to continue with that support, because as we saw with some of the teachers that testified, that we are able to bring in talent that we desperately need, and we need more of it. So whatever we can do to continue to support that effort, like I said, I'm here to just lend a voice to help on behalf of the principal leadership team to say, continue with that support, helping the HR department so that they can fulfill their promise to us to get us the talent that we need. And so while we're here, we can continue to develop that talent and keep them here so that again, we can turn Waukegan Public Schools around and make it the great place that we know it can be. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Next slide, please. We do also have a local initiative in the Waukegan area. We do use some lawn signs. You probably saw some during the election. We have banners. We also advertise in social media, basically Facebook. Social media allows us to target specifically Waukegan with some of our, for our vacancies. We also have referrals, and we used to have a job fair that haven't worked lately with the COVID. We have to cancel it twice, but we're looking forward to 2022 to have our spring job fair here in the city. Normally, we don't have high number of certified staff coming from that job fair, but we do have some traffic of candidates for other support positions in the district. Next slide, please. So we do have a board action recommendation that we will bring for the next board meeting, which will be basically that you authorize travel for the purpose of recruitment, as we have explained today, when we and only when we deem that those efforts are going to be productive and positive for the district. I don't go if I don't have a reasonable level of certainty that I'm going to be able to produce a candidate for the district. For candidates for hard-to-fill positions, special ed, bilingual, math, science, budget not to exceed $18,000. Those are coming from grant funds. I don't expect to be able to spend too much of that money, but the reality is that there's still travel restrictions and we only can travel when allowed. Next, are there any questions?
Mr. Figueroa, have you, I appreciate all the information. I wish they were in front of us. Sorry about that. I appreciate the presentation and all the information that you all gave. I'm just wondering, have you all reviewed into AppleTrack in terms of the old applications of people that submitted applications and check to see if those people are still looking for employment in AppleTrack? Okay, because I don't know exactly how the AppleTrack system works. If the information is stored in AppleTrack, if it can be retrieved of past applicants that may not have been hired. Are you looking into doing that?
We can certainly look into that, the way the process works, and I want to point that the hiring of candidates in Waukegan is decentralized, meaning that HR facilitates the attraction and facilitating bringing individuals, applications, or interested for positions in the district, but that the actual hiring happens at the schools and the supervisors level. So, having said that, when there is a vacancy in the school, for example, the vacancy is posted, that immediately creates some applicants. They do go through the AppleTrack system and they apply specifically for those positions. So at any time, the users of the system, the supervisors, can go back and they can retrieve some of that information. I believe that we did clean some of the very past years of the records because they were very long time ago. It wasn't something that was recent enough, but we certainly can try to see if the system would allow us to send an email or some type of communication to see if we can reactivate their interest. At any time, any applicant can go to the system and can use the all application that they submitted in the district and reactivate it and submit again for our vacancies.
Mr. Rivero is saying that they can look into it, but they are currently not using AppleTrack. But there's a way that the system would allow.
Oh, okay, but you understood my question.
The question is, could you, and I just want to make sure I'm capturing it. For those who didn't hear, I believe Ms. Hannah's question is there a way to go back and reach out to those previous applicants to see if they're still interested in the current job? And Mr. Figueroa said that he does believe there's a way to do it. That's not currently how they've been using the AppleTrack system.
Right, okay.
It's dual. We can do it, but also all the users in the system who are recruiting for their buildings, for example, they can also go and activate some of that account and contact them. That information is available to them too. The HR office will take your suggestion and we will try to contact them independently through email. We can do that, and also see if we can generate some new interest in them to apply for any of our existing vacancies at the present time.
And one other question, you talked about the overall Illinois recruiting effort. National University, is that one of them?
Yes, ma'am.
National Louis and Northeastern?
Northeastern University, yes, ma'am.
And Wisconsin, I hope Carthage College, Parkside?
Well, with our digital platforms, we cover all of this area completely. We have over 40 websites where we are publishing our vacancies at the present time.
You also are using the university center out there?
Yes, I think Maricela explained that we're using the network of community colleges in Illinois, including in that network, CLC in Grace Lake is including in that network, but we're not limited to that.
But also the University Center, Ms. Hannah. Yes, we actually have student teachers from the University Center.
Yeah,
Yes.
good, very good, very good, very good.
Go ahead. You can use
Sorry,
it.
Ms. Hannah. So, yeah, just to clarify, yes, we are using the University Center, and we're currently, we do have student teachers that are attending and in hopes of them actually then becoming certified, and then we could recruit them, yes. But it's a local area, so it helps, yes, it helps recruit our Lake County candidates.
Good, and you all are also working with the Grow Your Own that we have here in the district?
Through Grand Canyon University, we are right now, because through Grand Canyon University, we actually have students who are in the process of completing their LBS-1 endorsement, and then upon completion, then they'll be fully certified. We have 2 candidates who graduated December of 2020, so we're just waiting for them to obtain their licensure in the state of Arizona so they could transfer over to Illinois.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the?
2 different programs. So what Ms. Hannah is referring to is the Grow Your Own program, which is through the state, where I believe, where I know Ms. Fulton heads the efforts for the district with recruitment, and they are currently accepting enrollees. So her question was specific to the Grow Your Own program, which is headed by Ms. Fulton.
Is that through the ELO department?
But I'm not sure that what I saw in the website, Grow Your Own, I think Ms. Fulton did share a text not too long ago, or a message, and I was able to see it, and she was quoting the Chicago office. So I think what we have been doing here locally is that we have some sort of ability to bring people into the district that are taking courses locally. For example, the Grand Canyon University is providing locally, especially employees of the district, normally sometimes paraprofessionals, they want to become teachers, they are in that transition. So yes, they're from here. Now, the program that they use is through Grand Canyon University. Doesn't have the same name in the program, but we do have the same process through Grand Canyon here locally. And we're more than able, if Ms. Fulton bring us a local chapter of Grow Your Own, we can certainly work in that venue, because the Chicago chapter will handle Chicago residents.
I want to be very clear, is what Ms. Fulton is doing is a local Lake County chapter of Grow Your Own. And the students that she is recruiting are students from, or are current, majority of them Waukegan employees or Zion employees. And so I guess I would just ask, is that we get on the same page. It's because if there are individuals who are going through a Grow Your Own program that is here in the district, that is targeting district employees, it would be awesome for human resources in the program to be on the same page. So I think when we talk about it in the efforts with Arizona University, I remember there was a presentation on it maybe a year or 2 ago. So I'm glad to see that those efforts are paying off with actually 2 candidates, but there is an actual Grow Your Own program with a Lake County chapter that is already currently operating in Waukegan Public Schools. And I just want to make sure, because there's a lot of people who did a lot of work in order to get that program off the ground. So I want to make sure that they are getting that credit and that there's a conversation so that people know what each other are doing.
So I think
What to support that.
I think there's confusion and we're getting stuck on the schools. So Grand Canyon has offered discounted rates for employees who are looking to further their education, whether it's their master's or obtain a bachelor's degree. That's what Mr. Figueroa is talking about. Grow Your Own is a program that Representative Mayfield has helped us secure. And those individuals who could either be teacher paras, security officers, who have some should I say, college work behind them. There's a variety of schools that they can go to. It's not one specific school, so I can't name every school that those employees are going to, but Grand Canyon can be an option for that. And I just want to ensure that we're completely understand that those are 2 different strands, but Grand Canyon can be the college of choice for some of those employees if they chose.
Right, but aren't the ones that are in Grow Your Own, aren't they getting their certification as teachers? Yeah, they're getting, and that's why it kind of shouldn't be, and it should be together with HR.
So HR will work with them, but right now they're working on their academics, et cetera. We're not at that point yet, and there's a process of how Grow Your Own works. I do want to state that, yes, teachers, but they can go into counseling, social work. I think there's a number of options that the candidates can choose from.
And I think without getting in the weeds, what I want to say is that the expectation is that the candidates who go through Grow Your Own, for as aggressively as we can recruit in the Philippines and Spain and Puerto Rico, is we're recruiting just as aggressively with individuals from our own community who are right down the street. So the only thing I want to take is good job for the efforts that we have going on. But I think what Ms. Hannah and what we just learned is to make sure that we're aware of what other things are happening internally, because I believe that last class had about 10 candidates. So just to track where they are, right? Because some of them are farther away, some of them are really close. So I appreciate that. I have Mr. McBride who had a question, and then I got a couple, and then I know we are at 7 with this meeting. So go ahead, Mr. McBride.
I appreciate your presentations with getting your flyers and posters and so on out to advertisement to bring teachers in. And I also appreciate the idea you having to go out of the country and bring teachers into the country. But I see this has been a problem for District 60 for a while, trying to bring minorities into the district, into the classrooms, not just with teachers, social workers, and on and on. And it behooves me because of the fact that when I look around society, it tells me that we don't have minorities qualified to be able to come to the district. And I know that the work effort to bring people into district is possible. And I'm saying that, I'm going to use the superintendent, for example. The superintendent, she goes out and she brings positive staff into the community, but she's able to recruit those individuals. And how she does it, I don't know. But we have several individuals that come from all over the place that we have in our district right now, from the administrative level to other levels of district. So, but when it comes to teachers, I just don't get it. I mean, before you was Fred Howard, and I'm hearing the same old story today that I was hearing when he was here. And maybe we may have to hire a consultant to do that job. And I seen it was $18,000 grant up there that for staff to go out and recruit. But maybe we need a consultant that's an expert that can come in and bring teachers in. I'm saying that to say if you run a campaign, an election, they normally get people that's good at that to win an election. So maybe we need to find a consultant that just does that, hire teachers to bring teachers in here and maybe that would take some of the strain off of you where we can get them in here, because right now I just don't understand it, why we can't find social workers, teachers, minority individuals to come into this district to work. It just behooves me that that's not happening.
Hold on. Good point, Mr. McBride, and then I'll turn it over. But I do believe, and this has been a conversation that the board has had on a number of events, and I think it's really important. We have not been coming together because of COVID, but what I would like to do is have a workshop on actually how many people of color are choosing education as their career path. And I think when the board sees the national numbers along with the state numbers, you'll see the percentage of people of color that are actually choosing to go into education has declined, or they're choosing other options. So I would like to recommend that we have a board workshop to actually look at the data of how many people are choosing education as a career, and of that pool, realistically, how many does the state of Illinois recruit, how many can Waukegan recruit, etc. We tend to think that that number is a lot larger than it has notably been through the data that has been released in many much research. But when we see those numbers, I'd like the board to look at that. And as a result, because we know that people of color are not choosing to go into education, and our legislatures are seeing that also, that was the result of the Grow Your Own program, so that we can assist people who are currently working in positions in schools to make education and give them some financial assistance to become educators. So my suggestion would be that we have a workshop to look at the data nationally in the state to really see what we're up against as a district, and have some dialogue around how Waukegan can either offer more opportunities to employees who work for us who choose to go into education but may not have the financial resources to back it, or other type of avenues that we can pursue and be creative and innovative. So I think that that's a great comment, Mr. McBride, and I propose that we have a workshop surrounding that. There was one other statement I wanted to say, but I'm losing my train of thought.
Well, and I appreciate that, Superintendent, but you know, I guess I speak the way I speak because when I go to Chicago and I roller skate and I'm around the city, all I see is African American teachers, and that's that's where the vision is coming from. When I say I know that there's educators, there's social workers, there's teachers, there's real estate brokers. All African Americans that I see around me, and they're all teachers, not just custodians, not just individuals just working behind the scenes. They're up front in the classrooms, and they're African American, male and female teachers. So I guess that's what broadens my thoughts why we can't recruit African American teachers here in Waukegan. I mean, and I'm saying that because of the fact. I'm going back, this is my fourth term, I'm going back when Fred Howard, this same conversation was happening then.
Thank you, Mr. McBride. I got a couple of questions, Ms. Hammond. I did. So when we talk about student-teacher placement, that's one thing. Is that handled through the HR office if someone wanted to make that type of relationship, or is it handled at the school, individual at the school level?
I'm sorry, which one? The
For
placement?
student-teacher placement, right? So if you have a university that's interested in getting their student teachers to teach or shadow or observe in Waukegan, would that be handled through the HR department or specifically with that school principal?
No, it is handled with human resources. So a lot of times the student will reach out to HR and they'll let us know that they're interested in student teaching, or other times they reach out directly to the principal, and then the principal will forward that information to us.
And so I know there were conversations with the College of Lake County, and I believe Ms. Patty was leading that work. I don't need any information on it tonight, but I would like to know where that program stands today, and how many teachers were able to participate, and just to report out. I'd also ask for the board, with concurrence, to receive just a list of the universities and colleges that we partner with. I think that's important. And then I also just want to mention two things very briefly, is the recruitment versus retention. I think it's great if we are recruiting, but we also should be working on focusing on retaining our talent so that every year our recruitment pool, goes down. I think it's great the efforts that we're taking to bring in those hard to fill and staff areas, but I want to make sure that we're not bringing them in and losing them out the back door, as they would say, right? Because that doesn't give us stability. So I do want us to focus on climate as we figure out what will actually get teachers to remain. Right now, COVID, and honestly, as the superintendent said, when we do the workshop, is what we're seeing is a teacher decline across all races. And then COVID has exacerbated that issue with those who are not going into the education field. And so those are going to be ramifications that are felt for a long time. So what are we doing to address? And then lastly, I was encouraged to hear about the resources that were provided for the individuals who were coming in to work here in our district from Puerto Rico, Spain, and the Philippines. Me and Mr. Figueroa and others have had this conversation, as I believe that we should be taking that same approach with all staff members, regardless of where they come from, in order to make sure that they feel welcome, that we provide supports, that we get them familiar with the community, and that as we start to recruit, and when we were going down to Tennessee State, and if we make other arrangements with other colleges, even if it is Chicago, is that we give them a lot of the same opportunities and resources that we do for individuals that we're bringing in and recruiting from overseas. So I know that there were things with helping people with accommodations, right, while they get settled, picking them up from the airport. I think all of those things, welcoming dinners, right, to make sure that, hey, we're going to Louis, and this is a Waukegan staple. Those are all great, but how do we do them to make sure that is, that feeling of camaraderie and acceptance is felt by all staff members? So I appreciate the efforts, but those were a few of my thoughts in those requests. And just for the superintendent, it was to get an update on the current partnership with the College of Lake County Early Educators Program, and also a list of the university and colleges that we partner with. I got Coach Maione, and then if you got a statement, you'll wrap it up, Ms. Hannah.
Mr. McBride, I'd just like to address your question. Just real quick, the city of Chicago has a 30% population of African American, and 21% of their teachers are black. Waukegan has a 15% population of black Americans, and I believe the population of the school, I don't know, I couldn't find it exactly, but it's around 8 or 9%. We've had this issue ever since I started teaching here in 1994-95. We don't keep teachers who are black or Hispanic because we don't pay, and that's not a condemnation of anyone, it's just a reality. If a teacher can, and I've taught with many people who have left and gone to Libertyville, Stevenson, Pickett. I used to actually, when I was living in Highland Park, before I moved up here 6 years ago, I went to one of my son's parent-teacher nights and met one of my former students who used to teach at Greenwood. And we had a discussion about why she left. And this was pre-strike. She just couldn't afford to. And that's a reality that we have to embrace, is that you're not going to be able to retain teachers of color because they're in high demand and they can go elsewhere. And they do. And I don't blame them because they should.
So Ms. Hannah, final thoughts. Oh, Ms. Leguizamo.
Yeah.
Ms. Hannah, Ms. Leguizamo.
Okay. I am going to respectfully disagree with that blanket statement that about the teachers of color here in Waukegan, because we've had many teachers of color here in Waukegan for many years. They retired from here. But my question is, I have talked about it a number of times here on the board, and many of the teachers that were in Waukegan, many of them started as students here in Waukegan. And the Future Teachers Club, any of you long-timers remember that? The Future Teachers Club, the Future Nurses Club, that gave our students the motivation to go into teaching and into nursing. Those are the two I remember. And so I'm asking, why can't we start a club like that for the students that are interested, that may be interested in going into teaching, and start a club like that? That's how we got many of our teachers that were here in Waukegan anyway, through the high schools, through the clubs. Absolutely.
And that's the last comment on this topic.
So I have two questions and then two suggestions. So quick question, for the hard-to-fill vacancies, how long does HR have the applications out in the general market before going and recruiting from outside sources?
The vacancies are posted as soon as the EPART report of the vacancy resignation take place in this system, and then we post, consistent with contracts with the unions, we post for a minimum of 10 days. Normally, we do have some generic postings that we keep for the entire recruitment season. So if we know that we're going to need special ed teachers, then it's a dual posting. We have a generic special ed teacher posting that stays on in the system consistently through the recruitment season, and then we have the particular specific vacancy in a school. Those get posted 10 days, and if the supervisor do not get any applicants or the supervisor do not find any qualified individuals to fill the vacancy, then we do a reposting of all of those vacancies.
Thank you for that clarification. The second question I have here is, you mentioned 3 countries to expand recruitment. Are you looking at other countries as well?
We have other areas, job markets, as I call it, under consideration at this time, and I will prefer to share that privately with the board because we don't have anything solid, so I don't want to raise an expectation that we cannot meet. As I mentioned, we don't engage in any trouble or actual operation unless we have a good sense that we will be productive in the effort.
Thank you. And then, so the other thing I just wanted to mention is I talked a little bit about creating an alumni directory for our graduates. Is that something that the team is looking into? And from that alumni directory, seeing if we could recruit 4 years down the line or X amount of years down the line for our nurses, social workers, teachers, paraprofessionals, et cetera?
Right. Well, in that sense, I think that the Waukegan High School will be the appropriate site to develop that the first step in that direction. Then we can coordinate, especially with the counselors in that area. It's not something that we are doing at the present time in the HR department.
Okay, that was one suggestion. The other suggestion is very similar to what Ms. Hannah had mentioned, was a lot of times the reason why people don't go into fields is because they don't understand what it all entails, right? They might have a general idea, but not the actual full details. So similar to what Ms. Hannah had said in regards to a club, I was thinking even, be a teacher for a week, be a nurse for a week, or something, some sort of intro class for our students that are currently in high school that could be exposed to these type of environments or school-related jobs. There's technology as well that people don't think to apply at a school, right, when it comes to this stuff. So just was wondering, and just as a suggestion, I'd like to see about putting in some sort of program for our high school. And I know we have our career and college plan coming up soon. I don't know how you guys are working with that closely in that plan together, but I think that would be very beneficial for our students, especially since our students is over 95% people of color, right? Our students are wanted and needed in the job market. I think that'll be a great opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion.
Thank you, Ms. Leguizamo. With that, there's an item which doesn't have, which is there for information, but there was nothing attached, which was the Assistant Director, Coordinator, Academic Chair Level Entitlements.
Thank you, Board President. So we did add this agenda item because we had the information available to us and we felt it was relevant to bring forward at this time. The last 2 years, we've asked the board to give director-level benefits for retirement and health insurance to our coordinators, academic chairs, as well as our assistant directors. We're bringing it forward at this time because, similar to what was mentioned earlier about vacations, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, individuals and their personal circumstances, whether it's retirement benefits or more specifically health insurance benefits for them and their families, their dependents, is something we want to keep intact if the district is able to do so, and we feel that we are able to do so. We are recommending that we continue this recommendation through next fiscal year, and that it terminate June 30th of 2022. The financial information and the breakdown for each job classification is listed there for you, but I will sum it up and say that the total value, the approximate value that we're looking at here, is $373,604.72. So again, these percentages, these benefits, this is something that these individuals currently have. This isn't going to be new for them. We're just requesting that they be extended for 1 additional year, which would match the recommendation that we brought forward in June of 2020. And we do have some staff members here. If there are specific questions related to the benefits as well as the district's financial ability to support this, if there are any questions, we'll take them now.
No real questions, just, I don't have my glasses on, but I think that's just cold. Is what it would look like to make these changes permanent. I know we've talked about it. I know there were issues with it. I know we don't like that permanent word, but I think once a group has something, it's always difficult to pull it back. This will be now the 3rd extension that we've had over the past 3 years. And so anything that we take away, in my opinion, amounts to a pay cut for a lot of individuals who may not have known that these entitlements were temporary when they took the roles. So as we go into the budget planning process and have those further conversations and look at the fiscal impact, I would just hope that we keep in mind and actually weigh what it would take to make these things permanent so that we're not doing it on a year-to-year basis. And people also, I think they need some sense of predictability as to if we're going to continue on, if it's actually a part of their jobs and entitlements, or if it's something that won't come with it. So I support doing it for another year, but I really do want to have a conversation on what it would take to make these entitlements permanent.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Vukovich, I see you walking to the microphone.
Yes, I'm not totally familiar with this. I remember when it was on the agenda last year, and it's just the type of thing that, you know, we talked to, Mr. McBride is gone from the room right now, but you talk about keeping qualified teachers. This is the kind of thing that if you're going to offer it to administrators, you better start thinking about offering it to the classroom teachers as well. Mr. Maione brought up Highland Park. A lot of those districts, they pay the same type of benefit for a classroom teacher. That's why you don't keep them in this district as long as you should. So you really ought to look at this closely. If you're going to allow it for one group, you should expand it for the entire staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vukovich.
So if there are no additional questions or questions on the other information items, that concludes the OSC agenda for this evening.
I just want to ask, so you're bringing this to us at next week to look at? To vote on?
Yes, ma'am. We would like to bring this forward at the April 27th board agenda. Similar to the vacation item earlier on in the agenda, we're going to provide the board the individuals that would fall in these three categories, so you have the specific personnel information, so you're able to make an informed decision.
All right, thank you. It is now 7:28. I'm going to ask that we adjourn.
Board President?
Ms. Leguizamo.
Sorry, just really quick, I just had a question on a student account activity. I believe we have a representative here.
Go for it. You can ask the question yourself.
Just, so I noticed in the student account activity, this is the first time I've seen that, there is a thing called One Pilot Chromebook for $124,000 in there. I was just wanting to understand what is that student club or activity or program that is there for.
Thank you, Ms. Polk.
Thank you, Ms. Polk.
Board President, Board Members, Superintendent, that's for the Chromebook collection fee that we've had in previous years. We didn't have it for the current year. And typically, we pay for the repairs on the board side, and when we take that money and move it to reimburse ourselves. But all of the collections from the students are deposited in that account.
Okay, so we are collecting the $50?
Not for the current year. This is past fees that were collected, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And we
so
just
much.
haven't transferred it out yet onto the board side.
And then what happens with those fees is that it gets dispersed into the school budgets, is that correct?
No, IT uses those monies to make the appropriate repairs to the student Chromebooks or buy repair parts or whatever they need.
Okay, thank you so much for
You're
that
welcome.
clarification.
Thank you. I would like a motion to adjourn. Motion by Ms. Hannah. I got a second by Mr. Riddle. Roll call vote.
Mr. Castellanos?
Yes.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing? Ms. Hannah? Ms. Callahan Wozniak?
Yes.
Continue with our student achievement meeting at 7:40, so 10 minutes, and we will meet back here. Start right on time, please. do see Ms. Hannah and Mr. McBride moving this way, Ms. Leguizamo as well. So I'd like to call to order the April 20th, 2021 Student Achievement Meeting. If I can have a roll call, please.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak.
Here.
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo.
Present.
Mr. Castellanos. President Ewing.
Here. All right, we do have all board members present. We have item 3A, the approval of the meeting minutes for March 20, I can't see that. 20, what date is that? 16, see? I said 20, March 16, 2021. Motion by Mr. Riddle, second by Ms. Wozniak. Any comments, corrections to the minutes? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Castellanos.
Yes.
Mr. McBride.
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo.
Yes.
Mr. Riddle.
Yes.
Yes.
President Ewing.
Yes. All right, minutes are approved. Move on down to discussion items. We have the extension of Elevate K through 12 summer school. It's a 5-minute presentation.
All right, good evening, Superintendent, President Ewing, board members, colleagues, members of the community, and guests. I'm going to ask Dr. Null to come up to discuss Elevate and our summer programming.
Thank you. Good evening, Superintendent, Board President, members of the board, members of the community, and colleagues. This evening I'm presenting to you, we are requesting board approval for the extension of our Elevate K-12 for purposes of our high school summer program. The rationale and the purpose for this request is obviously to support our summer school program initiative, provide some flexibility in staffing for high school principals to fill some potential teacher shortages. As you know, we've used them in the past. We've used them prior to COVID. We used them during COVID as well. So they provide an online Tier 1 instruction from highly qualified certified teachers to help us fill any instructional gaps that we have in our staffing needs. Similar to what we did last time, we are presenting the board with a range. And the purpose behind the range is because at this point, we are not sure exactly how many positions we will need Elevate to help us fill. So it's going to be based on the number of students that enroll in our summer program and, of course, our overall staffing needs. At this time, the high school does have 73 applicants that have applied to teach summer school, internal candidates that have applied to teach for our summer school program. So obviously we're going to tap into those resources first. And then any remaining needs that we have, we will possibly use Elevate to fill those needs. The range, the low end would be $172,800. The high end, $345,600. Again, depending on the number of sections that are needed to cover. That would be remote instruction. Elevate only provides remote instruction. So the students, would be in person in the classroom, and they'd be streamed through a teacher from an Elevate teacher. Yes.
I remember a range from last year. What did we end up using last year?
If I remember correctly, the high end of the range was 1.8 million. I want to say, don't quote me exactly, but it was, I think it was 1.8 million was the high range. And we ended up using roughly 663 plus 155, 820,000 roughly for our hybrid learning.
Mr. Riddle?
Dr. Nault, I just wanted to find out, I see part of this is progress monitoring, and I'm just wondering if the board could get a report at the end of this, at the end of the summer school, to see how the kids really did, how many students were enrolled, and what their progress was, how many successfully completed the course versus how many dropped out or didn't finish successfully.
And that's specific to students enrolled with the Elevate teacher, or are you just talking about the overall?
Really, just to see how effective this. I'm sure this is the wave of the future. I just want to see how effective they have been, because they say on their report here that that the schools will be able to track student progress. So I'm just wondering. I don't know if we did that with the last group that we used, if we really tracked progress, but if we did, I'd like to see how that went, but certainly would like to see how it goes for the summer here. What sort of progress? How many kids started with Elevate in math, for instance, and how many successfully completed that math course they needed to make up or that they decided to take?
Sure, we can provide, as Deputy Superintendent is saying, we can provide both our regular summer program and through the Elevate classrooms as well.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Anna.
And I guess it kind of similar to what Mr. Riddle was talking about, because I was asking for that the board be provided with the progress of achievement with students from the Elevate K-12, and we are, according to their contract, that the reports and information, on student progress, it's in the contract. So I would certainly hope that we do receive the information, and it's unfortunate that we don't have it now to look at how the program is going, so that before we approve an extension contract, we could see if this program is beneficial to the students, and also for the money that we're paying for this service. And could you please, okay, I think Mr. McBride asked if this is going to be in person or by remote, and this is remote, right?
Yes, the only services that Elevate provides are live streaming instruction. They don't have any in-person teachers. However, we will have a Waukegan staff member in the classroom to serve as the classroom facilitator, manager. What?
Academic performance manager.
Say it again.
The academic performance manager at APM.
No, I'm sorry. They call it a classroom manager. If you look at what the customer staff provides, it's a classroom manager in each classroom, and that's usually obviously somebody the students know that has facilitates the classroom internally while the instruction is being delivered by the teacher.
Don't you see that on this photo?
It's right below Miss Hannah, right below the Elevate K through 12 staff provided. It has a list of people there. Then it's right below that, the classroom manager.
Yeah, and one of the things within the monitoring and the reports, as I was looking at this, my note was, has Elevate K-12 increased students' understanding, test scores, and specific needs? And that's according to their contract. They stated that. And so I'm looking for that data to show that. And then my final question is, did the regular teachers get the option to work summer school?
Yeah, as I mentioned, Ms. Hannah, we have 73 teachers that have currently applied for the high school summer program. We're going to, the high school team, the principals, the area superintendent are in the process of reviewing all those applicants right now, looking at their certifications and placing them in classes where they fit. Any additional gaps then would be, we would tap into Elevate. Yep.
So, this is just an effort to ensure that we have as many sections available so that we can do as much credit recovery as possible, so that our students can catch up, and then we have other students that can earn the credit they need to graduate. So that's why there's that range there, but ultimately we'd rather have our own teachers teaching our own students, but we wanted to make sure that we had a backup plan, and we thought the best backup plan was something that we were currently using. In terms of the questions that both you, Ms. Hanna, and Mr. Riddle asked about effectiveness, we do have a meeting scheduled with the folks from Elevate coming up rather soon. I don't know the exact date. Jason meets with them, but this is something that we're going to talk about, is where we're at, what we need to do to make adjustments. Again, this is not, we don't want to replace person-to-person contact. That's not what we want to do. But we do want to make sure that we have all of our bases covered moving into the summer so that we can recover some of the learning loss and that our students have every opportunity to make up those credits.
Speaking for me, but I hope with the concurrence of the rest of the board members that it's not fair for you all to bring us a contract extension request, and we now have questions regarding this, and we're being expected to vote on this next week, and we still don't have the information. You know, I want to see how effective this program is, and if it is working, you know, for our school district and for our students.
Okay, and we have some, in our next presentation, we do have some data to discuss, and I think part of it too, in all fairness to anything that we had employed during the COVID period, I don't know if we can truly measure its effectiveness. That's not an excuse, it's a matter of fact, considering the circumstances. And again, I'll just reiterate what I stated earlier. This is an attempt to ensure that we have every section covered. If we don't have to use Elevate, we won't. But we need to ensure that we can cover all the classes possible to make sure that they're available for our students. That's where we're at right now. So we would have presented this at a sooner time, but we're looking through what we had to present, and this was an option that we needed to have a plan B in the event that we couldn't get the teachers that we needed to cover those courses.
So the question that Ms. Hannah has is prior to the vote, because I know there wouldn't be data, obviously second semester is not over, but through first semester.
They've been here long enough for
The data from last year.
So you're requesting the data that, when we use Elevate for remote learning, you guys are looking for the data in terms of their effectiveness and the students that were in those classrooms from Elevate?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And prior to the vote, that's what Ms. Hannah is asking for.
Okay. Yeah.
I think we both got a question on resolution.
So real quick, I had Mr. Shinkton, and then I'm coming to the board, and then if we can move forward from Mr. Shinkton.
Good evening. Two questions. First of all, how many students are we looking at possibly being in the summer school recovery? Is it more than, you know, do we have like a ballpark, you know, percentage-wise of, you know, the high school students? Second, obviously this is a continuation contract, so any position you hadn't been able to fill, I'm assuming is at the same rate that the summer school will be paid at. So I guess my question, and it would probably be piggybacking off of something that went earlier. Now so I did the math. For one subject, say Algebra 1, on covering a morning and an afternoon block, the rate is $120 an hour that you're paying this company to provide the instruction. So in a 6-week period, that comes out to $28,000 for just one subject, for 6 weeks of work. Now obviously we're paying this to a company. This isn't what that teacher is making. But if we're willing to invest in the areas that we can't fill, if we looked at our compensation package as, you know, as an entire district, we might not have those possible vacancies because, you know what, you would have people fighting, literally fighting for these jobs. I mean, you were telling me that you couldn't find somebody, okay, we're gonna pay an outside company $28,000 for one subject. Well, you could pay, you know, for 6 weeks of work, you could probably find 2 teachers that would work for 6 weeks for $14,000. And I'm sure be tickled pink, especially, you know, somebody relatively new. So that's just one point.
Thank you, Mr. Kington.
I don't know what to respond to. There was a statement and then there was a question. What was the first question again?
It was about the numbers.
The numbers. So we don't know the numbers, and again, as I was discussing this earlier, that's why we are looking to use the services of Elevate, because if we do have a larger than expected number, or I shouldn't say expected, a larger than normal than we've had in the past, and we do anticipate that. We anticipate that there are going to be more students that need the credit recovery. So we anticipate and we want to accommodate that. Part of our summer school plan is to have some flexible scheduling for our students in AM and PM so that we can accommodate where they're at right now. We know the reality is that a number of our students have taken, a number of our high school students have taken jobs during COVID because they've had to. And so we've talked about that not only for summer planning, but moving forward in the future, that we're going to have to be accommodating for our students. So again, I apologize for the fact that we don't have all the data presented here, but this is a contingency plan so that we're not overtaxed. So that, and to your point about the number of teachers, is that there are certain positions, especially with math and science, that we can't find enough teachers to cover those sections. Whether we had them available to whether that was an option to pay more. If they don't have the certification, then they wouldn't fulfill that credit. Yeah, even prior to the pandemic. Go ahead, sorry.
Maybe I can help right now. So I just want to remind the board when we went with Elevate, this is a contingency plan. If we do not have a contingency plan, we have students sitting in classrooms without qualified teachers in front of them. This is not to say we're going to use this in 20 classrooms. This is not to say we're going to use this in 10 classrooms. This is our contingency plan. And I want to remind the board, we went into contract with Elevate prior to the pandemic. And thank goodness we did, because we know that during that time we were unable to recruit, hire. Our nation came to a complete halt. And so because of the forward thinking and the contingency plans, we were able to continue education as normal. And so as we move forward, not only through this pandemic, but just in our everyday world, it's very important that we tend to make plans forward thinking than the here and now. Because I do want to remind the board, and just even thinking with the board, speaking with the board president, if we had not expanded the one-to-one purchases for computers in middle school, that would have been even a heavier burden on our district. If we had not put air conditioning in all our buildings, majority of all our buildings, because I believe there was one left, our ventilation, windows. So we have to be forward thinking in this and not just the here and now. Here and now is not good enough for our students. We can get you the data of how many students did receive services to Elevate. We definitely want highly qualified in-person teachers in our buildings. So that is our goal, to ensure that every student has a teacher that is certified, qualified in front of them. But if we cannot recruit those teachers, especially in hard-to-staff areas, science, math, diverse learners, we just had our HR department give us a presentation, and we know that these vacancies are vacancies that we see throughout our nation in these areas where we can just not staff. We have to be prepared to ensure that we have another system to educate our students. And this is another option to do so. That's all. This is not stating, once again, I want to reiterate, that we're going to use this in a certain number of classrooms. This is the contingency plan. Deputy Cesario, I would like you to get those numbers out to the board in the morning so that they can see exactly the data. I believe that Ms. Hannah requested. If you can please send that out.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just want to capture what I succinctly point is, and what we even heard from, I think the conversations, the through line tonight, is this, I think, is, like you say, is plugging a hole. But long term, how are we going to change our recruitment strategies in order to attract us? Because I get the point. At my employer use staffing agencies, right? And when you use the staffing agencies, what you're saying is the individual's not getting X amount of money, but overall, this is how much you are willing to pay for said service. And so I want us to capture that and understand what I think the intent is if this is how much you are willing to pay in order for these hard-to-staff areas, how can you creatively incentivize either current employees or do that recruitment in-house?
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that that's the takeaway, at least with his recommendation. I think the board, at least I understand, I won't speak for the board, while we would want a contingency plan with Elevate and how we do plan to have a more robust offering for summer school. I think the other thing is, as Ms. Hannah said, and even what we heard from Ms. Wozniak, with questions, right, were around what is the summer school program going to actually look like. And so the data will help us make an informed vote, but we haven't even been told, what the actual, plan is for summer school officially.
And sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say we had committed that we would come to the board with that in May because we wanted to give more time to see what our COVID numbers are locally, how the hybrid in-person instruction is moving in our building. There's a couple of options on the table. The plan is pretty much baked out, but as a result of the circumstances that we are in, we felt that it's more necessary to wait to gather more data, see how the hybrid plan is going, see how the COVID numbers are going before we put a plan out there that we have to retract. And so at the last board meeting, we did state to the board that we would be bringing the summer school plan at the May student achievement meeting, and that is still our intent. We can send the board a brief synopsis of what we have put together if you'd like something earlier, but that plan is still very fluid and can change based off what transpires in our community and in the state. And I also do not want to take away from Mr. Shinkton's comment. I totally agree with that. We would love to employ teachers. We'd love our teachers to work summer school. As many opportunities as we can give our teachers to be in front of students, but we do have areas that, even though we recruit, the number of teachers are just not in that area. And there's many educators out here that just know that there's just vacancies because our students are not going into those areas at the rate of teachers that we need to fill those vacancies.
So I know with this one, the only other question, go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
Thank you, Board President. So I just want to piggyback in regards to the data request. I believe I heard over there that we're going to ask for data that is pre-COVID. Is that right?
You have it, don't you?
Is that what I heard, or is that, okay, because I'd like to say that we ask for the data during COVID, because this is one of the programs that should be successful pre, post, and during COVID, right? So I just wanted to piggyback on that information and request that we get remote learning information as well?
Sure, we utilize them the most during remote learning. Pre-COVID, we had some geometry classes that were being staffed by Elevate. I think it was only 1 or 2 sections pre-COVID, but that experience opened up our eyes to the possibilities of using them for in other areas. So we've used a significant amount of Elevate teachers during COVID. So that data would probably be much more helpful and useful for the board, because we had, I think, over 30 teachers that we used during COVID with Elevate.
And can you remind me, did we use Elevate last summer?
No.
I don't think we did,
No.
right? I think this is only
Right,
just
it's
for...
through the semester. I don't know where the data that they have is through first semester.
Say it again.
The data that you have is through first semester of this year?
We have data for the first semester for a few classes that we couldn't staff. I think geometry was a few sections, and there may have been one other one. But then we also did employ them during COVID because there was other areas that we needed to cover.
So during COVID would refer to the first semester of this year?
Correct.
Right.
Yes,
Well,
we're all saying the same
so
thing.
when we were I'm sorry. You know what? I have to correct myself. When we were in person too, we did, yeah, but for a very short time. I'm sorry, I can't keep track of the timeline.
Yeah, I get you.
Sorry.
So what we are all on the same page. The data that they'll be providing, I just want to make sure it's through first semester.
I want to see, Mr. President, I want to see when we first brought Elevate in, the information.
Go ahead.
They were also here before COVID.
They were here for 1 month, Ms. Hannah. We started using them February 2020, and early February 2020, and then March 2020 is when the shutdown happened. So that there would be a month worth of data for the geometry classes that they were covering at that time, and they continued on with those classes, obviously, once we went remote. But then we started to use more and more Elevate teachers,
At all grade levels?
middle schools and high school.
Okay, and that's really important.
Mhm.
With middle school, and in conjunction with how well it was going for our students, particularly high school students, and the fact that we are pondering with the credits. See, so all of that works together.
Mhm.
And so I want to see the data.
No problem.
Right, okay.
No problem.
And then,
Because all right, 5 minutes. So Ms. Leguizamo's last question, and then Mr. Riddle, and then we have to move on to another topic. Ms. Leguizamo?
right, and so I just wanted to clarify. So when I looked in the packet, it also described a potential usage for elementary. Right now, or last year, we had 44 high school periods, 18 middle school periods for Elevate
6 through 12.
K to 12, right? But I'm looking in regards to, is that going to be expanded potentially to elementary for summer school? Or that's just maybe it's just in there as their like marketing material?
They only serve 6 through 12 right now. I think they were talking about expansion, but currently what they offer is only 6 through 12. Because we did ask about that for other areas, bilingual, dual language, things like that. But right now, they only staff 6 through 12.
And this is only presented as credit recovery, right? So there's no enrichment in these programs yet. That's being requested.
It's for right now. It's only again. It's a contingency plan so that if we're overtaxed, we don't have enough teachers, that we can cover those areas so that the students can make up the credits that they need.
And right, and just to be clear, we do not pay on the contract if we don't use them. That is right.
Right. We only pay for what we use.
Only pay for what we use. Thank you.
Mr. Riddle?
Here. Is summer school strictly in person, or will we be offering hybrid for students who still are afraid to come in? And then how would this work? How would this particular program work if the kids are watching the screen in the classroom, and then you've got a couple more that are watching it at home?
It's the same thing that we did. It's the same thing that we did during our remote. That there were students that were able to access remotely, I mean, they would just interface with the teacher on the screen.
And we had a classroom
Okay.
coach.
So
And
you're going to offer, is summer school going to be both? It's going to be a hybrid?
Mr. Riddle, we can't
We don't know.
commit to that as of right now, and that is why the plan is, we're not displaying the
We'll see
plan
how it
yet,
goes.
because we're waiting to see what our COVID numbers look like. In our community, but also within the state. We talked about that there was a spike, and we're also seeing how the transition to in-person learning with the amount of students, are we able to support it safely? So that is one of the major reasons why the plan is on hold.
Uncertain. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We now have information items, but they are presentations. So we have item 5A, the K through 12 STEM plan.
Okay, so Dr. Nolt and
Mr. McBride, you had a question?
Yes. I just want to say appreciate you guys because of the peculiar situation we're in these days because of COVID. Just the effort of even trying to put a plan together. One thing I would say, I think would kind of accommodate some of the questions that's you've been hit with in terms of accountability. I do know that just from where we have been, just with not just summer school, regular school. I've been in several households where the screen has been on, and I'm sure other people can contest to this. The screen has been on, and the kids are probably in the other room playing Fortnite or PlayStation 4 or something, and there's no way that you are able to monitor that. So, and then if there is some way to monitor it, I'd like to know what's been going on, how it's been being monitored to say that kid spent 2 hours, 3 hours, and as far as accountability goes. I mean,
Right.
You guys got a plan for that?
yeah. So first, thank you, and then second, in the presentation regarding the student achievement during COVID, we're going to talk about some of that. And you're right, Mr. McBride, that was very difficult on a number of levels, not only in Waukegan, but I would say in every district. There were articles about it, and I'm sure those of us who have children that were learning online can also attest to the fact that we'd have to remind our children to keep their camera on. But yeah, we do have some information about what the area superintendents and what the principals were doing to support teachers and to monitor students.
Well, I was hoping that you'd come up with a strategy or a plan to help the parents to be able to.
We did monitor some of that, and we did put some information into the remote learning handbook. We updated it regularly from the beginning in March, April, and then throughout the last year. But yeah, I mean, anything that we could do to provide and to support. But you're right, there were students that were not logging in or checking in or using their phone, and at the middle and high school that was much more prevalent. And again, it's not a justification or an excuse or anything like that, but unfortunately, this is a trend that we saw not only here in Waukegan, but also across the country, especially at the high school level.
Well, I'm just glad you're doing what you're doing, because I do believe an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, because if you don't do nothing, you get to nothing.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. McBride.
With that up, K through 12 STEM presentation?
All right, thank you. I'm going to ask Dr. Nolt, Drs. Nolt and Dr. Vassal to present on this. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Board of Education, Madam Superintendent, thank you very much for the opportunity to present this evening. My name is Robert Vassal. I am the new Pre-K-12 Science and STEM Coordinator here at Waukegan Public Schools. Wanted to introduce myself before we got started. Originally started my career as a high school physics and chemistry teacher. I also have experience as a high school division head of math and science, an associate principal for curriculum instruction, and a high school principal before coming here to Waukegan Public Schools. I was fortunate enough to begin here in Waukegan in August of this past year during virtual operations, which guessing most of you can imagine was unlike anything most of us have ever experienced. So starting working out of my basement in August in a new school district was quite an experience. Over the course of the last 9 months, I've been working closely with administration, staff, building leaders, and starting to talk about the current state of STEM here at Waukegan and developing a vision as we move forward. You can see up here the vision is to engage students in a standards-based curriculum that uses STEM practices, cross-curricular skills, and experiential learning. Students will investigate and build models and theories related to the natural world as they explore STEM pathways related to college and career readiness. And so the question comes up, well, what does that mean for our students in elementary? What does that mean for our students in middle school? And then what does that mean for our students in high school? So if you can jump ahead there. At the elementary school, we want to introduce students to STEM practices in a manner that engages them, motivates them, and creates an enjoyment and a passion for them in STEM careers. We want them to recognize that they can enjoy and experience success in STEM fields and also in some of the reading, mathematics, social studies, science fields that are so integral to STEM. So at that elementary level, it really is about exposure and building a passion for some of those STEM experiences as they move forward. At the middle school, we want to build on that work done at the elementary schools. We want to begin to explicitly tie those STEM practices to the coursework and college and career pathways that our middle schoolers will be moving into at high school. Those opportunities could include engineering, advanced manufacturing, medicine, environmental science, or other STEM fields. At the high school level, we want to encourage students in STEM coursework and college and career planning. This includes opportunities for students to engage in dual credit or AP STEM coursework, such as computer science or environmental science. It can also include STEM-related career and career certification opportunities that are offered through Lake County Tech Campus, such as IT or information technology, laser technology, the medical field, and other areas. So the current state of STEM during the COVID-19 pandemic and kind of where I came into the district and where we've come in the last 9 months. Originally began with virtual meetings with elementary, middle school, and high school science and STEM teachers. First of all, introducing myself to them, but also beginning a working relationship, especially during virtual instruction, because as you can imagine, STEM coursework, science coursework, one of our goals is to make sure it is experiential learning for our students, that they are hands-on. And coming into the district, knowing that we were in the middle of virtual instruction was a lot of conversation with our teachers on how are we going to adapt our instruction. We know that we can't have our students building toothpick bridges and testing them in class together and working in collaborative groups as we normally would. So how do we adjust that? How do we do something online that still has them experiencing the engineering design process while our students and our staff are all at home? So a lot of conversation there. A lot of conversation with building and district administrators, finding out the work that has been done, the kind of things that had been suspended as a result of COVID, where we wanted to continue to move forward. Engaged in curriculum writing and operational meetings for the EIR STEM grant, and Dr. Null will talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. This winter and spring has been a lot of resource evaluation at our elementary and our middle schools, talking about what resources they have available. After being out of the building for 12 months, a lot of our staff came back and found they thought they had things, they didn't have things, they weren't sure what they had after being gone for 12 months, so it's been a lot of conversations about what do they have in their individual buildings, what kind of things do they need to get up and running during hybrid, and also what kind of things do they want to have as we move into our next school year with the hope that we're all back full-time. And then finally, working with the middle school and high school staff as we move forward into next year. Next steps as we continue into the spring, the summer, and the fall, I'll continue working with the staff, with building leaders on needs assessments and program evaluation, especially hopefully now that we'll be able, hoping that we get students back into the building with our teachers to start to look at our implementation and our instruction moving forward. We'd like to use data from those meetings for not only short-term goals in the fall semester and into the spring, but also looking at long-term goals on a 3-, 4-, and 5-year plan, and then continue with our implementation of the EIR grant. Also working to support continuing ongoing curriculum development. That is part of the EIR grant that's continuing to roll out. Also supporting new curriculum adopters, that is, we bring in some of our standards-based new instruction. How do we support them, whether that be through professional development, whether that be through resources, whatever that case is. Supporting our Cohort 1 computer science teachers. We have a cohort that's moved in to earn computer science certification. Want to continue to support them as they move into this, their first year and into their second year of the program. And then continuing on from there, I'm going to let Dr. Nault talk a little bit about the EIR grant and how that complements our vision.
Thank you, Dr. Basso. This is actually the first time of me meeting Dr. Basso in person this evening. So when he talks about 9 months of working through a computer screen, that's what we've been doing. As you know, the district also has an EIR grant that really complements a lot of this work that Dr. Basso just mentioned that he's doing with the teachers in the buildings, et cetera. So just kind of want to make that connection for you so you can see how they all are kind of working together. Next slide, please. So our ultimate goal, as Dr. Basso mentioned, and as the EIR grant was written, the proposal was written, is to create a K-12 pathway for students in Waukegan, a STEM pathway for students in Waukegan. And here's what it looks like across the continuum. If you start in kindergarten, go through grade 12, in terms of some of the content areas that they'll be exposed to throughout this pathway. Next slide. So here's a snapshot of what a K through 5 STEM curriculum will look like when we're through this process. You can see at each grade level kind of the areas of STEM that have been embedded or will be embedded into the curriculum at our elementary, our K through 5 level. Broken down by each quarter as well. So this is the curriculum work that's ongoing that Dr. Basso is doing with his team. That is obviously being done through these cohorts of teachers, which I'll get to in a second. Next slide. At the middle school level, again, you'll see a breakdown of the continuum here about what students are getting exposed to in these classes through the STEM curriculum. Next slide. And at the high school level, of course, you know, besides the intro to computer science classes, we want to offer AP classes. We want to offer some higher level courses for students that choose to stay in this pathway. So that's what it would look like at the high school level as well. Next slide. As mentioned, we currently have a cohort of teachers that are going through a program. They were selected in January of 2021. Currently, there are 7 elementary schools that are impacted by this first cohort. There's 3 middle schools, and the high school has 2 math teachers that are part of it as well. There's 28 total teachers in all that are part of cohort 1, and this is a partnership that we have with Northeastern Illinois University as part of the EIR grant, okay, and the Lake County ROE. They are critical partners to provide this training for these teachers. And below that, you'll see what they get out of this cohort will receive when they're done with this training program. They're going to get a computer science endorsement through Northeastern Illinois. They will get training in specialized training in math, science, STEM available to all teachers in participating cohort 1 schools. So it's important to note here that these trainings are available not only to the teachers that are in the cohort, but to all teachers in the school. So if a teacher is in the school, but they're not a part of that cohort, they can still attend and be a part of these trainings. So it's a way for us to I guess, expand STEM curriculum and knowledge to other teachers, other content teachers as well, if they choose to participate. Also, we get specialized equipment, supplies, classroom furniture, which I'm going to touch on in a second through this EIR grant for all of our cohort 1 schools. I'll give you a breakdown of the schools that are getting the furniture and kind of some visuals there. And then, of course, there's coaching cycles and observations that they're doing with each other as well. So we have cohort 1 currently, 28 teachers.
Approximately 4,821 students are being impacted by the teachers going through that training. Next slide. Cohort two, I'm sorry, here's a breakdown if you wanted to see cohort one, in terms of the total teacher participants at each school and the students that are being impacted by that teacher going through these trainings. Next slide. Okay, oh, sorry, Ms. Hannah.
Yeah, going back, could you go back to the previous, okay, what I don't understand is, if I was reading this correctly, the other 5 schools that are not listed up here, well, I'm not sure.
Our elementary schools?
Yeah, okay.
This is a combination of elementary, middle, and our high school here that are part of cohort one.
And so my point that I'm
Mhm.
trying to make is, if this is a multi-year program,
Mhm.
okay, we're leaving students behind that will, the students that are not getting this STEM education, it's going to take them 2 years to get their school into the program, which you're going to be leaving students, and I guess I'm going to use I'll go to the second grade, okay? The students that are in second grade
Mhm.
that are not in the schools that are not listed in this cohort, right? They'll be in 4th grade by the time they get to STEM education. And so I guess what I'm saying is, we have the money, why can't we do all of our schools so that everyone, all the students are on the same level instead of leaving students behind, and by the time like I say, in second grade,
Mhm.
second graders, when you guys start this one, now will have advanced to grade levels. And so they're missing out. Okay, they're not gonna go backwards to get the STEM, right? And so I'm not understanding why we can't do all of our schools.
So we are. All right, so I'm speaking to specifically the cohort of teachers that are getting specific training through the grant. And that's what this cohort one is and cohort two is. The work that Dr. Vaso was talking about is the work that's ongoing and it's impacting all students, if that makes sense. So cohort two will be all the other schools as well. That there'll be teachers from select cohort 2 schools that will also receive the same kind of training and opportunities to receive the curriculum that's being issued by Northeastern Illinois University. But again, trying to make the bridge between the EIR grant and what the work that Dr. Vaso is doing. I want to make sure you guys understand they're connected, but they're different as well. Okay, the EIR grant is a completely separate research proposal that was written by the district.
I know.
Okay, that is going to help support our STEM work.
Right.
So it's not in isolation of the work that Dr. Vaso and his team is doing with the curriculum writing with STEM as well.
So you're telling me that all of our schools, not just the ones listed, all of them are going to begin getting this education?
So that pathway, I'm sorry, Ms. Hannah, that pathway that I showed you, that K through 12 pathway with the different courses that are going to be offered at each grade level, that's our ultimate goal at the end of this project. So when we walk away from this grant, that Waukegan has a K through 12 STEM pathway developed for all students in the district. Now, it does take time to build that, and that's what some of the work that Dr. Voss is doing, that's some of the work that this EIR grant is doing as well, is building that process and that curriculum and developing that stuff in place so that ultimately we can get to the point where it's a K through 12 pathway for all students.
So you understand my point?
I do understand, yes.
Because we're going to be leaving kids
All right, so cohort 2 will start in January of 2023, and they're getting the same services. Of 5,000 students will be impacted by cohort 2. 32 teachers will be going through the training that I mentioned through Northeastern and Lake County ROE, and those schools will also be receiving specialized resources like furniture, classroom resources, etc. Next slide, please. So all in all, when we talk about access and equity, obviously is a huge part of everything we're trying to do here. Throughout these 2 cohorts, we're going to expose a large number of students to STEM curriculum throughout the EIR grant process. Again, not to be confused with the work that Dr. Vassal's team is doing as well. That's ongoing work as well. All right, in terms of deliverables then, for the grant, for purposes of the grant, WPS will be improving the K-8 STEM curriculum. That'll be part of the work that Dr. Vassal was doing in conjunction with the grant. There'll be, like I mentioned, a K-12 STEM and computer science pathway established for all students. Teachers will have computer science endorsements and pedagogical training through NEIU. We'll establish a STEM, computer science, math, and science PD and a learning library through the Lake County ROE. And then some of the measurable outcomes that we want to see, because remember, this is a research-based grant, so there's a research component to this grant. At the end, increase and expand access to computer science and STEM education for our students, increase teacher, computer science, STEM content and pedagogical knowledge, increase student achievement and attitudes towards STEM. So those are some of the things that at the end of this grant period, the researcher will present us with findings about the impact that this grant had on our district. Next slide. Other things, of course, we'll have a newly updated and aligned K-8 curriculum that's aligned with the next-gen standards. Highest quality STEM resources available. If you guys remember, at the last meeting, you approved some updated, I forget the name of them, Lego supply kits for students. That was part of this process as well. Classroom furniture and equipment designed specifically for STEM maker spaces in classrooms. Teacher training in STEM and computer science. Coursework, PD, coaching, model classrooms, etc. So these are the things that the grant will provide us throughout the course of the grant. Here's a snapshot of some of the furniture that's currently being placed in rooms. It'll be done this summer. All these rooms, they have the specific classroom numbers there, are going to be STEM classrooms at each school. And you can see the furniture that's being provided to those classrooms through the EIR grant. That was part of the budget that was submitted in the grant application, is to provide schools and classrooms with this furniture. So these are mock-ups from the vendor that will essentially mirror what you see in the classrooms this summer. And they've been working with the principals, obviously, to identify the rooms and work with the teachers, et cetera. But these are examples of what'll take place in some of the schools. Next slide. More pictures of middle school furniture that will be available to all of our students starting in the summer of 2021, this summer. Next slide. So as I mentioned, there was $240,000 budgeted in the EIR grant proposal for this flexible furniture, which is what I just presented to you, those pictures and those images. And that'll be, again, installed this summer, 2021. They already have plans with multiple schools to have it set up and delivered this summer as well. And finally, I just wanted to, I believe that's it. Yeah, finally, I just wanted to say that none of this would be possible without our EIR grant team. Obviously, in addition to the work that Dr. Vassal is doing with teachers and everything at the district level, we have some people behind the scenes that I just want to take a second to acknowledge. Our project director, Ann Zahn, has been working tirelessly on this for the district. If you recall, we did consult with her to be the project director for the grant. Our grant coordinator, Nick Chin, makes sure that obviously we're using those grant funds as indicated in the grant application. He handles the finance side of things. Our NEIU representative, Rachel Adler, is working with all the teachers to provide a lot of the training. Jeff Chagrin is our grant evaluator. He'll be providing the evaluation piece of our grant project. The Lake County ROE, of course, Dr. Vassal, Dr. Strategakis, Dr. Kevin Brown, and all of the teachers from the different schools and the cohorts that have been a part of this process. So I just wanted to thank them for all their hard work throughout this process so far. Thank you. I don't know. But she was not responsible for this grant. This grant was written by Ann Zahn when she was here as our science coordinator. Ms. Tate was not in the district at that time yet. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. McBride, and I'm going to ask, because there's no actual ask for agenda item, this is just an update, that we keep it kind of short. We still have two relatively long agenda topics. Go ahead, Mr. McBride.
I just want to compliment on the grant. North Chicago just received a grant from AbbVie to build a actual STEM school next to Novak, and they spent I think it was about $14 million just to get that school. Was it 40? To get that STEM grant, the STEM school up and running. So it's a blessing that we just got a little taste of what they got. And so, and I know that this STEM grant that they got in the STEM learning, it's been around for a while. I guess Science Academy, one of the schools over at Waukegan Community School, is that right, Brandon? They've been doing STEM lessons, from day one, and it's been a great success coming out of that little small school over there at the Science Academy. So I'm glad to see that the district is moving in this area of learning. Thank you.
Ms. Leguizamo, and then unless the community has any questions, this will be the final question on this topic for tonight.
Thank you, Board President. This is probably going to be more comments than it is questions. I think I can try to summarize everything I was writing down. But when we're looking at this plan, when I'm looking at the STEM plan, what I'm looking at is what are our students going to do with this information, right? I don't see anything in this programming that talks about career introduction in the STEM field, so it's okay that we're teaching in the whole STEM field, but what our students don't know is why they need to know that and when will they apply that knowledge, right? Growing up, I remember we would always ask, when am I going to use this information in algebra, right? So same thing in STEM. I really do feel that we need to implement some way, some sort of career introduction along with our STEM programming so that they understand in middle school you're learning about coding and programming. What does that look like? What kind of jobs can you potentially get? Because in middle schools is when they need to start understanding their career development. High school is already too late if they don't have an idea of what career they want to get into. So I'm just going to make that statement, but I also like to think about our future jobs, right? I'm looking at VR, virtual reality, AR, augmented reality, in our classrooms, in our student hands, as well as 3D printing that has all of these future jobs that hasn't yet been created. We're at the forefront of creating this STEM program and the STEM plan. I think this is where we need to be at that more futuristic level. I really don't think that our STEM program is comprehensive enough in our middle school and high school levels, and that is where it is really important to drive the STEM fields and make them really love STEM, right? I think elementary is a lot of intro to it, and they get familiar with it, but in middle school and high school, that's when they're really gonna love it, and that's where that career development comes into play. So what I'm looking for in the end of this whole entire STEM plan is, what are our students going to do with that knowledge? Where are they going to get into with that information? But a lot of things too is, and we talk about, Ms. Hannah had talked about what can we do now, right? Some small incremental wins we can do now. And some of that I think of is, when can we get competitive in our STEM fields? We have Destination Imagination, which is just in our local area. That's a STEM competition. We have the Naval Great Lakes that has the underwater submersion robotics competition. we should be involved in that. JROTC, no reason why our second largest public school JROTC program doesn't have a STEM arm in that whole entire plan as well. And most importantly, and the students would kill me if I didn't bring this up, esports.
Yeah.
Esports is the thing. It's not going to go away.
No.
It has a lot of technology embedded in that, and that is something that they have been saying that they want in our schools. So I wrote a lot down, and I'm just going to say that as a comment and give you food for thought to think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have our student achievement and COVID-19 as a 15-minute presentation.
Yeah, so before I start that, though, I do want to just thank Dr. Nault as well. He thanked everyone. Dr. Nault did step in when Ann transitioned out of the district. It was a huge grant that she landed, and even though she's still involved, Jason really does do a lot of this work, so I wanted to acknowledge Jason for that. Thank you, Jason. Okay, so moving on to our next presentation. This is going to be a team presentation, so you're going to have various members of the team. You did say to move ahead, Board President, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So I didn't want to skip ahead without making sure. So first, I'd just like to talk about the purpose or the objective behind this presentation, right? The question was posed to us about defining learning loss. So we will do that within this presentation. We'll share what the definition of learning loss is, and we'll also discuss the COVID slide. We've heard that term. We're going to share what that means, and then we're also going to look at assessments and the assessment limitations that we had with NWEA, IAR. We couldn't administer them. So what did we do? How were we measuring student learning? What were we using? And we're going to see that we were using actually quite a bit at all levels. The other thing that we wanted to talk about, and which was most prominent during COVID in the pandemic, was social emotional learning. How are we supporting students? What supports do we currently have in place? How did we expand those? And then lastly, I'd like to share the success and celebrations that we had with the work that we actually did do. The board president spoke earlier about taking vacation and encouraging people to do so. And actually, that was something that I did on my team, and I know that my directors and my associate and area superintendents encouraged our folks to do the same thing. One thing that I will say is that not many people did take us up on that offer, and that it was especially March to now, it's been nonstop work. I think it's important to acknowledge the work that was done because it was we're talking Zoom fatigue, we're talking body fatigue from sitting down and being in front of a computer for hours on end and trying to constantly adjust and juggle a lot because it was not easier to be at home for our teachers, for our admin, and actually with that we still moved on a number of our initiatives. One of the biggest ones was the curriculum work that we're doing. In addition to that, starting with the standards reference grading and building upon that. So I just wanted to mention that. So right now, the first slide that we have here is on learning loss, and I'm going to ask Dr. Nault to come back up. He's going to come up to the mic. Our team will come to that mic and share their information. Yep. So this is a good idea. We'll just hold questions till the end. So for the sake of time, thanks. Dr. Nault?
Thank you, Eduardo. Good evening again, everyone. So what is learning loss? We have a brief definition up there just for the board and the community to see the definition of what we mean by learning loss. Essentially, any type of regression that students experience in performance due to extended periods of interrupted learning. The typical example that we usually look at is summer break. As a principal, I remember we called it summer melt just because it seemed like whatever we taught students at the end of the year kind of melted away until they came back in August, and we had to kind of revisit some of the things in their courses that they lost over the summer. But any interruption to to learning, students can experience learning loss. Context is important when discussing this and what to do about it. So we're going to look a little more closely at what some of the research says about that this evening. Next slide, please. So the summer slide, not to be confused with the COVID slide, is essentially learning loss that students experience as a result of summer break, as I mentioned. Research on this suggests that students lose between 2 weeks and or 2 months of academic growth over the summer. Typically, we see students decline more in math over the summer than we do in reading. Obviously, because of that daily reinforcement with math skills and how they build upon each other is extremely important. And research suggests that greater loss occurs in the upper grades over the summer. So our sixth graders, middle schoolers, and high schools and beyond is where we see that the most. In terms of the COVID slide, same concept, except students are experiencing extended interruption of in-person learning due to the pandemic. And we know that's been, with our reentry plan just taking root this month, it's been 13 months since our kids have been in person. And it's very similar to the summer slide, with the exception of that the research shows that obviously because of the length of the COVID slide and some other factors that come into play, there was a much greater negative impact on learning due to the pandemic. Next slide. So if we look nationally at some of the trends that are out there, and there's a ton of research on this already. A lot of researchers and organizations and companies jumped on the opportunity to come up with different research on what this looks like nationally. So you'll see at the end of the presentation, we listed a bunch of resources. If you want to do some own digging on yourself, we put some links in there that you can read some articles and look at other research studies, etc. But we just I pulled a couple of them and just tried to summarize as best as I could what the totality of the research was saying. And essentially, learning loss in reading during COVID was greater for students in grades 1 through 7, particularly in the early grades, first, second, and third grade. We know that we want all students to read by third grade. So that first grade year, that second grade year, and even the third grade year is so important for students to develop those reading skills. And they noticed, the research suggests there was a huge learning loss in reading for those students. Research also shows that learning loss in math was greater for all students in all grades. So across the board, all students decreased in terms of their learning loss in math. Particularly, again, at the elementary level, they saw some bigger impacts there. Looking at Waukegan and some of the more urban districts, you'll see the learning loss, obviously, which we anticipated, is greater for students in districts that are serving low-income students, minority students, as well. That there's a distinct greater loss of learning in districts that serve those types of students. Next. When we break it down by content area, when we look at students that are on grade level versus those who are not, when we look at reading, national trends suggest that the percentage of students who are ready for grade level work has decreased nationally compared to historical averages. So that when they looked at students who are typically on track to do grade level work, historically, the 2020 and 2021, there was a decrease in that nationally. Students in grades 1 through 3 were impacted the most. The percent of students who are more than 2 grade levels below has increased. So when we talk about that achievement gap, students that are coming to us already below grade level, the number of students nationally where that increased was higher than the historical average as well. So a lot of work has to be done, obviously, to get those students back up to as close to grade level as possible, and that impacted students in grades 1 through 7 the most. When we look at math, kind of a similar trend here. Those that are ready for grade level work decreased nationally compared to historical averages. Students in grades 1 through 6 were impacted the most in math. The percentage of students who were more than 2 grade levels below, again, increased nationally compared to historical averages. Nothing surprising here. We kind of knew going into this that we were going to be experiencing learning loss for our students in the core areas, especially reading and math, and the research just reinforces kind of some of the things that we had anticipated and expected already. Next slide. All that information I just gave you does not take into account additional factors. So, for example, They just looked at, students' performance outright. They did not look at the impacts of trauma on students, the impacts of what the educational environment was like in the household, all right? They didn't look at students who were EL or DL, all right? So when we factor in those other criteria, those other things, the numbers are probably going to be much more exasperated than what some of this research is telling us. Obviously, they think, or they know that the achievement gap because of COVID is going to be expanding between the highest performing students and the lowest performing students nationally. So we're talking about a widened achievement gap as well. So when we look at math, we look at reading, we look at some of these other factors, you'll see the impact that we have and the challenge that we have as a district to get our students back to where they were last March. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jonathan Brown, who is going to walk you through kind of an example of what we're seeing here with learning loss. Dr. Brown, thank you.
Evening. So if you're looking at the screen here, Lee, if you can help me out by pointing a little bit with the mouse. So this is just an example. When we talk about learning loss, there are many different testing companies that have tried to model what that learning loss might look like. This is one example. I wanted to provide a visual so that you could see it. This is NWEA and their predicted research. So what you have are 3 different grade levels. The 8th grade, if you look all the way on the right side, 8th grade, 6th grade, and 4th grade. Starting on the left, what you'll see is where students begin. Actually, let me start at the beginning. On the left y-axis is the actual test score that a student would have. The x-axis at the bottom is the school year, the time of year. So at the beginning of the school year, a student would earn a certain score, and they're usually on a trajectory that is, while we know learning is not linear, it's an upward trajectory where the student earns higher scores, and that shows evidence of higher learning. So if you follow that line to the right, as we get further into the year, you see it increasing. Now, the first vertical line that you see is when school closures happen approximately across the entire country. So at that point, the solid line still models what would happen in a typical year for a typical student. So their achievement would still continue. Then the next line, vertical line, is the last day of school. So last day of school happens, and then you see next to the continuation of the solid line is a dotted line that goes down a little bit. That's what they would consider the summer loss, typical summer loss. So everyone goes down a little bit, and then they recover in September and start to increase when they start to learn again. So that's a typical pattern that you would see. If you go back to, thank you, right there, the next dash line below that is considered partial absenteeism. So for some students, every student's experience was different during the initial COVID time. So that line just represents students that engaged in school in a partial amount. So what their loss or what their trajectory was estimated to be. And then you see their summer slide on the right side of that. The last dash line is what is expected from the COVID slide. That represents students that were not able to engage in instruction for the most part for the rest of the year. So that's how they've modeled that. And that's what the resulting slide looks like for them. So depending on the student's situation, the outcome is that first day of school where students would be estimated to fall when we came back this last fall in September. So that's just a visual example of what they are trying to explain when they say learning loss due to COVID slide, summer loss, and so on. We can go to the next slide. So typically, every year, we always try to have a measure of how our students are performing using our local assessments and our state assessments, NWEA MAP, the Kindergarten Kids Assessment, IAR, College Board, all of those that you see on the screen. We typically use those to give a snapshot of student progress. Next slide. But due to COVID, all of those things were canceled at least once, and some of those are only given once a year. So last year they were canceled. As you know, at the last meeting, we're talking about trying to implement our state assessment for this next month and then pushing some things back to the fall for the next year. So those things were canceled for us. In the case of our locally controlled district assessments, we have needed to cancel multiple administrations while in remote learning conditions. We did attempt to administer assessments remotely in the fall, but were not successful in gathering results that we would actually deem to be valid. There were too many instances of assistance being provided to students at home, parents wanting to really help their kids during testing, as well as technical difficulties that happened during the fall assessment attempt. These assessments primarily provide a snapshot of student achievement at one point in time in those general areas that you saw on the previous slide. So, if those things were canceled, then what do teachers do, or what did they do over the course of the year in order to measure student achievement? So, although we were unable to capture valid measures of student performance on a large scale over the course of the year, that doesn't mean that student performance isn't measured and, more importantly, acted upon. Educators have missed having access to large snapshots of student performance, but those data are not what drive instruction in the actual classroom, nor should they be. Educators across the district understand that the most effective way to help students progress in their learning is to engage in formative assessment practices. The practice of formative assessment is defined as a process used by teachers and students during instruction that provides feedback to adjust ongoing teaching and learning to improve students' achievement of intended learning instructional outcomes. Day to day, minute by minute, checking for understanding where the kids are, and making adjustments so that you can move instruction and student learning further along. So while all forms of assessment are important, the need for teachers to engage in formative assessment is reflected in its position in our WPS 60 balanced assessment system. Next slide. So this is a graphic of how we look at assessment in the district and what we strive for. So this graphic depicts the balance of the WPS 60 balanced assessment system. It is not intended to mean equal in balance, but more so a proper balance that meets our district's members' needs. Our system is a combination of various measures: diagnostic, formative, interim, and summative measures, all different types of assessment, measures of student performance, which are utilized in a strategic manner to address immediate student needs, like formative assessment, inform ongoing instructional adjustments, and guide long-term educational improvement at various levels: the classroom level, the team level, the building level, and the district level. All of those pieces work together so that we can gather the data that we need to help students move forward. We said classroom formative assessment was the most important part. That's why it's the largest part of that graphic there. Grades are important because kids need that feedback, parents need that feedback, but that's more of a summative purpose. The accountability assessments, like the IER that we're talking about doing next, those are important, but that plays a small role in what we do to move students forward. And then the same thing with our interim benchmark assessments like NWEA and such. Yes, they provide a snapshot, but that's not the thing that drives student instruction. So this is what we strive for and are continually refining. Due to COVID, teachers have needed to rely even more on classroom-based assessment in general and targeted formative assessment tasks. The next few slides will detail a few of the assessment tools that schools have utilized in some way over the course of the past year. So what do we do in order to measure student progress? Now, on all of the next three slides, you will see the same format. The purple on the left just represents typical formative assessment. This is just a sampling. Formative assessment tasks that teachers would do on their own in their classrooms. So entry slips, exit tickets that they have to come up with on their own in order to figure out what students know, what they can do, and what do I need to do to help them move forward next. What you see on the right side for this elementary school example are different programs or assessments that, assessments or programs that have assessments that are embedded within them that allow teachers to figure out where students are and measure their progress as they move forward. Next slide. Middle school, this is the same, a similar example for them. On the left side in the purple, all levels use those same types of formative assessment tasks. But on the right side, you see the different types of assessments and intervention programs that are used at that level. And they are available in English as well as in Spanish. Next slide. High school, another example. You probably recognize many of these that are on the list. In addition to that, you notice the social studies unit assessments, literature unit assessments, science unit assessments. Those are assessments that are embedded within the curriculum that they use commonly across those curriculum. Next slide.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. I'm going to ask Mr. Ryan Hawkins to come and present on our SEL framework and the work we were doing regarding social emotional learning.
Thank you, Deputy Cesario. Good evening, Board President, Superintendent, board members, community, and colleagues. So this is our framework. So there's hyperlinks in here, so if you are not able to click on it, please just get a hold of me. I can definitely get you these documents. My team and I have developed 3 different frameworks, pre-K to 2, 3 to 5, and 6 to 12 because of learning differences in each grade level. What we did with the framework is really incorporated the CASEL competencies, which is our basically national standards. We incorporated our Illinois SEL standards, and we made it a one-stop stop for teachers. So if, let's say, Mr. Riddle was teaching a 5th grade class, he would create his lessons plans for the week or whatever in English, math, science, social studies, etc. He would not have to do anything with social emotional learning. It is all in the frameworks. So we have Palm Classroom, we have PBS, classroom practices and cool tools. For elementary, we have Second Step, and then for 6-12, we have our Panorama Playbook. And then we have 2 outside resources that we incorporated into the framework as well, which is Learning for Justice, which is formerly Teaching Tolerance. They just had a CEO switch, and the Greater Good in Education, which is out of Berkeley, California. We embedded all of these things so that a teacher literally can click on this framework, pop it up, and those lessons are already embedded in there. What are the lessons really incorporating? Again, the CASEL competencies. Sorry, I'm trying to talk fast for some reason. And we also embedded diversity and inclusion, equity, cultural responsiveness. And a lot of these lessons come from Learning for Justice as well, so that we can really have a well-balanced social-emotional learning framework throughout our district. Our team is, we're considering these documents working documents as we're continuing to add, to make them more and more robust as we go throughout the years ahead of us. Our next step is incorporating trauma-informed care into the frameworks, and we're actually working with one of our behavioral specialists, Barry Schwartz. I actually have a meeting tomorrow with her. So that is our social-emotional framework for the district. 2 to 3 years out, we look to have this broken down by grade level, so we will have 14 different frameworks, and it will obviously be a lot more robust. But this is a really good start. I encourage you to look at it, and please provide any feedback that you can for me. I'll take that to the team, and yeah, we're really looking to amp up social emotional learning.
Thank you, Ryan.
Next slide. This is our staffing that helps supports our teacher and paraprofessionals. We have psychologists, social workers, counselors, the outreach department, the FACE department, the DL Diverse Learners department have several different specialists and other positions that help out, along with my team as well. And then we have our outside support, which we started this year. I'm very proud that we actually initiated these two, BAM and our AHS clinicians, before COVID hit, so we can really have those wraparound supports for our students and families. One thing, in addition to these two slides in social emotional learning, another thing that I'm proud of our district about is during that second week of spring break that the students had, where we did professional development, we made sure that teachers felt as comfortable as possible coming back into the buildings. We dedicated an entire day to social emotional learning. There was, I believe it was 5 professional developments around trauma, around students in SEL, and around teachers in their own mental health capacities as well, and making sure that we're taking care of our mental health as we move through this pandemic and all of the other outside things that are going on in our nation today. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask our area superintendents, Shane Keelan and Amanda Patty, to come up and discuss an overview of summer school. Again, as the superintendent had mentioned earlier, we don't have everything baked up, but we do have general details worked out, of which we had mentioned earlier. So I'll let the area superintendents come up and discuss these details.
Not quite as tall as they are. So, good evening, everybody. It's good to be here and see everybody again, live and in color. So summer school focus is going to be on diagnosing learning loss, SEL and mental health, student-teacher relationships, and then external learning opportunities with guest speakers, either virtually or in person, and some field experiences, either in person or virtual. So we're looking for elementary and middle school, June 14th through July 9th, 4 weeks. It'll be the typical time as we normally have had, the morning sessions. Site-based proposals are being created by all the principals. They turned them in yesterday, so we have them in a folder, and we're getting ready to go through them with the team.
Good evening, everybody. For the Waukegan High School, Brookside, and Washington campus, as well as AOEC, we are offering our 6-week summer school program that we typically provide, making sure that we have enough opportunities for students to have some flexible sessions, which will allow them to select an AM or a PM session, so that way we can accommodate any family circumstances, jobs that they may have, other scheduling conflicts they may have. We want to make sure we're providing as much opportunity as possible for an AM and PM session for our students to take advantage of as many opportunities in the summer as possible. We're also making sure that we have specific unit recovery opportunities so that students make up exactly what they need to master. So there may have been portions of courses that they did well on and other portions of courses that they did not do as well on, and so making sure that we are teaching to what they need to master to show mastery of that course and content, and that way we're able to move them through those recovery opportunities efficiently and effectively.
All right, thank you both. Right now, I just want to start talking about some of the celebrations and success that we've had. I mentioned earlier, and I started with the collaboration across the district on the remote learning plan, the remote summer plan, and the hybrid plan. And it was a heavy lift. It was a lot of work because it was essentially creating everything from scratch. So it was, and it's ongoing creation, which speaks to the level of commitment that the teachers, that the administrators, that the district level administrators have to our students, our parents, and our community. Really, it helped to increase collaboration and communication across all the districts and all the district departments. I thought it was really great effort across departments for people to work together to accomplish goals. And we really worked at trying to provide more access to parents and students and staff through integrating technology into some of our systems. And as Ms. Laguzamo said before, or alluded to before, is that we need to expand what we're doing with technology and incorporate that. And that means not only in how we communicate, but what we're doing in the classroom, that the classroom isn't bound by four walls. And that speaks to some of what was described in our summer programming, where we're having virtual or in-person, depending on where we're at. Speakers come in, that you talked about career opportunities before, and where students are exposed. Also making sure that students have field experiences. Hopefully those can happen out in the field, but if they can't, then we can make them happen virtually as well, exposing students and teachers to new experiences and learning through those experiences, practical application of some of what they're learning in books, and they can actually apply it in the real world. Next slide, please. I'm going to ask Dr. Bublitz to come up and talk about the completion of his 3-year plan. I think this was also something that we've been talking about for a while, and it's actually come to fruition. Dr. Bublitz.
All right, good evening, board members, community, superintendent. And so, like Mr. Cesario said, we have the 3-year plan. And so, really, it's based on the inclusion indicators from the state, as well as the disproportionality monitoring and indicators that we do as well. And so in order to address those issues, there's a lot of actions that take place just to be inclusive and to be more equitable and reduce that disproportionality. First is, and foremost, is providing a full continuum of services. And what that really means is being specific, targeted, and individualizing the instruction, student-based, and making sure that we are scheduling for the program, that is the IEP, and that we're not writing IEPs for the schedule or programming. And so Dr. Jonathan Brown talked about formative assessment, data, et cetera. We use that. We may use some of that for progress monitoring, and that way identify those specific needs in the same way that he talks about differentiation. We want to make sure that we are keeping our students in their home school and in their home district. So by providing those services in not a generalized way, but a specific and individualized way, we hope to do that. Obviously, we have to address inclusive practice, and that's not just a matter of writing IEPs to be more inclusive in the general ed, but it's addressing the practice that we are doing. And so that involves many things, like I said, IEP writing, training on that, introducing such things as universal design for learning. We're looking at using Goalbook to help address IEP writing, as well as that introduction to UDL and helping gen ed teachers. We've started this year with co-teaching training, also speech paths, OTs, social workers looking at integrated therapies, where it's not about being in the therapy room, it's about being in the classroom or the natural setting, the playground, the lunchroom. Also, one of the things that I notice is making sure that all of our students have homerooms. Homeroom doesn't need to be the special ed room. It should be in there with their peers. And I know Mr. Christensen and I have talked about that, and he's been very helpful. So we're going to try to address that as well. Obviously, we're going to address academic, functional, social, emotional needs of students. We created a SEL framework for students with IEPs and behavior plans. We collaborated with MTSS on that and others to make sure that it runs from general ed all the way through. We are looking at our low incidence classrooms, which we have redesigned new curriculum to enhance what we have, as well as increasing our intervention abilities for our students with IEPs, as well as, again, collaboration with Ryan in MTSS, and we'll be adding Orton Gillingham training for the majority of our DL staff and partnering with MTSS. And this aligns with the things we do in teaching and learning, so working with Kevin Brown, Stacey Strategakis, and providing that training. Finally, differentiated professional development. Just like our students, our teachers are in different places. Some schools have been co-teaching for a long time, but perhaps not with training. Some have not done it, and everything in between. So we've set up a cycle to address the different levels We're building a 2 or 3 year cycle of professional development for paraprofessionals to hit many different areas. We've worked very closely, my assistant director Dave has worked closely with the union head Amy for that, and looking at, I'm missing a good one, bringing in UDL, and I'm getting old, since COVID I can't read as well. Orton Gillingham, incorporating that in as well, so we can address the needs of kids with IEPs or with generally kids who need a little extra help through MTSS.
Thank you, Dr. Bublitz. I'm going to ask our Director of Equity, Tasia Fields, to come up.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to share some highlights. We were able to successfully redistribute funds to address the inequities that arose during this pandemic. We also conducted our equity analysis, which is a vital first step to becoming a more equitable school district. We have finalized these results, and they will be made available to everyone in the upcoming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask our area superintendents to come back up and talk about some of the data that was collected, how it was used, how it was helpful to support principals, teachers, and students.
Hello again. One of the big pieces of work that Ms. Keelan and I wanted to accomplish this fall and into the winter was getting into classrooms. Part of our main role is to help support and provide coaching to principals around how they coach teachers and improve practice in classrooms. And when kids aren't in classrooms, we wanted to make sure we still knew what was happening for our students and their learning. And so we coordinated with each principal to do over 400 virtual visits into classrooms to observe ELA and math instruction. We looked at this instruction through the lens of Danielson Remote Framework, focusing on components around student engagement, questioning, and assessment. Really the goal here is to help principals, help teachers improve their practices. We know that remote learning, everyone was thrown into it. Our teachers did an amazing job at flexing and figuring it out and just really rolling up their sleeves and learning how to deliver instruction in a completely new way. And so by being able to observe that instruction and be a thought partner to principals, we were able to help them continue to coach their teachers. We know coaching is a key component on increasing our reflective practice and developing action steps so we can continue to refine what happens for our students in classrooms.
We also partnered with Matt Foster, and every other week have been meeting with middle school math teachers and really focusing on some priority standards and how we have them analyze student work through that process and go back and make sure that all students are learning and mastering those big priority standards. So we started that, was that like February? Maybe January. So we're still cruising into that. We have some really good lead teachers leading it, and so they're really starting to build their capacity and build their force, so that's good to see. So that's something we want to continue to do as well. We also continued our professional learning for two cohorts of future and aspiring leaders. So we have one that meets on Monday afternoon and one that meets on Tuesday afternoon, and really continuing to build their capacity so that they can become our next future leaders, whether that be district principals, assistant principals. We're really training them up for that process. So we're really moving in that area.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Josue Cuevas. We're going to talk about IT and some of our celebrations there, and a lot of work here in this area.
Good evening, President Ewing, Superintendent Plasencia, board members, and community members. In the ITS department, at the beginning of the pandemic, we have the challenges that we have students that do not have Chromebooks available. And that's when we joined forces with the area superintendents, with the principals, and we look classroom by classroom and looking for every single piece of technology that we have available so that we can put in the hands of the students. And immediately we realized that we have families that did not have internet connection at home, and that's when we came back to the board and we started looking for approval to buy hotspots. And in the middle of the pandemic, then we realized we need more applications. So 40 applications were implemented in the last year to benefit our students, our teachers, and our staff. The internet service providers that we have, we realize once we come back to normal operations, we need to have the network infrastructure that will support that all the schools, that every single student is going to have a device in their hands, and that's when we upgraded our network bandwidth from 4 gigabytes to 10 gigabytes. So we took fully advantage of the E-rate benefits because they opened that window during the COVID pandemic so that we can increase our network bandwidth. At the same time, we built here in Brookside campus our second main distribution frame, and this is in the case that we have an emergency at Lincoln Center so that we can fill over all the systems to Brookside campus and we can continue with our normal operations. We also apply for E-rate funds, and we receive our official communication letter from E-rate that for the next 5 years, we're going to be able to use $2.6 million so that we can buy and upgrade the existing network infrastructure that we have in our district. We purchased 11,300 Chromebooks. This is to upgrade the existing technology that we have in the hands of our students. And we also finalized the ITS reference guide. It's a manual that we created internally for our principals, assistant principals, and department heads. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cuevas. I'm going to ask Ms. Amanda Petty to come up and talk about teaching and learning at the high school.
On behalf of Dr. Stacy Serrata-Gakis, I'm happy to review some of the successes from the Teaching and Learning Department 9 through 12. The CTE Innovation Grant was awarded, and we received $300,000 for that grant. Working with Ms. Vanda Fulton, we developed a pre-K through 12 college and career strategic plan. The academic coordinators, 9 through 12, have completed and continue to complete the high school curriculum mapping, and their team has supported the summer school planning to help support the credit recovery and on-track status. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So as you can see, we have some links to some data here. I know that Dr. Nault, did you want to say any last words about EAB? Okay. So there are some, we're wrapping up right now, but there are some resources here for you, and just wanted to really talk about how valuable EAB has been as a partner.
Yeah, I don't recall exactly when it was, but the board approved partnership with EAB for the academics team, and we've really been leaning on them a lot throughout this pandemic and even before with data requests, research requests, thought partners to help us think through some things that other districts are doing as well. So I do want to thank the board for providing us with that opportunity. It's been an amazing resource, and we can connect with them on any topic, any issue that we're struggling with or challenging with, and they will get us research nationally about what other districts are doing, and et cetera. So we do definitely appreciate that partnership, and a lot of the information that you'll see here came from some of the resources they gave us for our request. So thank you for that.
Yep, and I thank you as well. Thank you for the support during the pandemic. Because there was a lot of information coming at us very quickly, a lot of decisions that had to be made, a lot of programs that had to be developed. But thank you again for your support. That concludes this presentation.
Thank you. Like I said, I know there was a lot of information. So board, if you have any follow-up questions, I would ask that you submit that in writing. I do want to give the opportunity if there is a community member who had any question on this topic.
The only thing I got all of this that was being done with the student academic. How has the grading, the reading levels of elementary students increased?
Yeah, I think Dr. Brown, if you maybe a superintendent want to, I don't necessarily know, you want to answer it shortly tonight?
And we could get the...
Yeah, so there hasn't been a reading assessment, and that's what we talked about, and Mr. Brown mentioned that they tried to look at that data, and we've talked about as a board that
with all due respect.
But the question is redundant, and I think we
Yeah,
talked about
it is redundant because I haven't gotten the answer.
The answer is we haven't done assessments.
Okay, but classroom, he stood there and just said that they're using Amplify, they're using Dreambox, they're using all of those different programs that we spent millions and millions of dollars on to help students increase in their reading, in their math and stuff. And we're not using them. They have assessment tools. And the teachers, the principals, they're getting data. How come we can't get the data?
Because they're not a norming assessment, Ms. Hannah. A norming assessment is IAR, SAT, ACT, etc. So yes, students are getting supplemental support, Dreambox, many other programs that you've seen, but there has not been a test to see where they were at the beginning of the year when they left, where they are now, and etc. We've explained that we have not been able to do that. We've also stated that the state had canceled assessments last year. They are going to require assessments this year. So, I mean, the information you're looking for is not going to be a valid numeric number of growth because the assessments are not there and kids have not been in school. Hence, the reason you see the graph on COVID loss, summer slide, etc., and nationally what those numbers are looking like because kids have been at home and have not had direct instruction in a classroom. And we really don't even know what those numbers are going to look like until students come back and we test them and compare them to where they were when they left. And we have not been able to do that yet because of the pandemic.
And you guys talked about, in the presentation, you talked about interrupted learning. I'm not understanding that either because our students were going to school 5 days a week, regardless of whether it was, they were even in remote learning, but they were in classrooms. And so, you know, and
So, yeah, the hours, Lisa, there are remaining questions around that one. I would ask that they be put into writing. I think we talked about it being redundant, but I think what Ms. Hannah is saying is she wants there to be some measure. We have these other measures, so can we report on what the Dreambox scores are or what things have gone up or how you, and I get what you're saying. I'm just repeating that's her frustration. And the superintendent has stated that we're not, there hasn't been an assessment, so that information or that data that we're looking for does not exist.
I can speak, I'll just take 3 more minutes and then we'll move on because we've had teachers that have worked all day and they've been sitting to prepare their presentation that was asked by the board on sports, and I would like to turn that over and get them home at get them home because they have to be back in the morning. And so as a mother in the district, and we have educators, it is unfair for us to hold our teachers, our students responsible for a pandemic that they had to switch overnight to remote teaching. Teachers were not trained on remote teaching. Our curriculum was not ready for remote teaching. In many instances, we didn't even have the technology for remote learning. And some of our students were not comfortable with remote learning. So as a mother, I have seen my own child, who was a solid student, decline this past year. And so to hold teachers, students accountable for a pandemic where they cannot instruct face-to-face, and this has been a life-changing event that I have stated numerous times is going to affect our economy, is going to affect the way we do business. We have to understand the circumstances we are in. And this is not only going to affect us this year, it is going to affect us next year and the year to come. Not only in our educational system, society in total. And our educators out there know that. So we can keep saying, let's tie a number, let's tie a number. What my stance, and I'm going to speak of my stance is that our educators stepped up to the plate when we said transition. My stance is our parents stepped up to the plate when we said, your kids have to stay home now, you have to help them. My stance is our students are doing the best they can do in the situations, their home situations that they are living in now. Not everyone has an ideal home situation, and we know that in the district we serve. And my stance is, I cannot hold my teachers accountable. Yes, they're accountable to teach. Yes, they're accountable to meet students where they are. Hence why we canceled teachers' evaluations this year. It would be penalizing for our teachers to hold them accountable to a pandemic where they had to switch on a dime to teach in a different manner. So we have to be understanding that we are in a pandemic. Things look, feel different right now. What we should be and what we are responsible is the social and emotional supports and how we transition these students back into our schools. And we've seen when we asked our teachers to come back, they came back. When we asked our teachers to accept students in their classrooms, they stepped up to the challenge. So as a district, we have unified around this to ensure that we are putting the safety of our staff, students, and I'm going to say, take that back, of all our stakeholders first. And that, to me, is the most important thing. And when we talk about accountability, that's what we need to be looking at. How smooth this transition was from going from one day to the next of in-person learning to remote. How quick we were able to distribute food. How quick our teachers were stepped up to the plate to learn more technology than they ever did or had to teach in a manner that they may have not been utilizing. And I don't want the board to lose sight of that, because as our educators and our parents are at home, this has been life-changing for all of us, as President Ewing has even stated in his own household with small children and even middle school children and high school students. I mean, our kids missed out on graduate. It's unprecedented times. And the state, there is no state assessment. So yes, Dreambox is there, and there's more supplemental supports that our teachers are utilizing to support students. We are holding down the fort the best we can, but until we get all our kids back in school and we can actually assess them to see what the learning loss is, we do not know where we're going to have to support or add more resources. And I'm just going to publicly now state that. Maybe I've never said it as direct, but this is what we're up against. And I'll turn it over to you, Board President.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent.
Yeah, thank you, Superintendent, for the comments. But I am not asking when I say where our students are. And